Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 327, and we are joined this week by David Welch.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here. You are with Altadis USA, so if you guys are longtime listeners to the show or viewers, Altadis USA is one of the sponsors, one of our main sponsors, obviously. You can see their logos behind us, like Montecristo. You can see Romeo y Julieta. You can see H. Upman. You can see Aging Room, sort of. That bomb is kind of blocking. Sorry, Raphael. There you go. Yeah, hold that the rest of the night, please. Okay. You see a big Montecristo in front of Nate this week, if you're watching on the video.
Looks like a championship belt.
You didn't win anything.
Ric Flair.
You didn't win anything.
Second place.
With Altadis USA, you guys have seen, we've had Charlie, who's no longer with the company. Josh Bentley's been on the show many, many times from the beginning. He is still with the company doing some other things for you guys. And then David is now, you've been with Altadis for how long?
Since February.
Yeah. So going on a year, let's call it.
Yep.
But first time on the show, he has listened before. He's up to speed. Want to thank our other sponsor, which is based out of here, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. You can find the cigar that we're featuring tonight, which is the Montecristo Espada Signature, and that is a limited edition. We're going to talk about that re-release. We're excited. One of my favorite Montecristos, actually, if not my favorite Montecristo of all time. So we'll check that out. Probably review it very poorly based on that statement, but we've got that. We also, like I said, Altadis USA, all the brands behind us. Appreciate the support from you, David, and also obviously Josh Bentley and Maria as well. Appreciate all you guys. Paul Waller was one of the first guys to believe in the show going back like 6 years ago. So really greatly appreciate that. BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are available. Gold is made by Plasencia and the silver is made by Espinosa Cigars. They're available at Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. You can get them online. In a sense, we have to ship them to you, but we're a little old school. But fantastic cigars. Check them out. You can also check out some of the swag that we have on tonight, the BS 3/4 sleeves. Nate has the gray and black. I've got the white, black, and gold. You can barely see. There you go, Nate. That looks great. There's other stuff on there. There's some hoodies. There's some T-shirts for the podcast, T-shirts for BS Cigars. Our 2020 shirt, when the world hands you some BS, light it up. Love that shirt. I had it on today, and 2 people commented on it while I was working. So love the feedback and all that stuff. But you can get that stuff there. Also, ladies' deep V's are on there. So check out buyjack.com/bourbon and BS for any of the shirts and swag. And last, certainly not least, want to thank all you guys out there. Patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast. You guys can get on there and do a monthly contribution to the show. We appreciate the continued support there. And also one-time contributions, Venmo at Bourbon and BS. Don't get a lot of action on there, but if you guys ever want to like buy a certain bottle for us or just throw a one-time contribution, that's a better way to do it than doing the Patreon and then canceling, obviously. So check those out. We appreciate the continued support, helping us keep this thing going and kind of fund all the streaming and everything like that. David, what did you bring with us besides the Montecristo Signature?
Brought the James Pepper barrel proof coming in at pretty close to 105.
105.4.
105.4.
Nice.
Never had it. Saw it. Loved the bottle. Decanter style. Right in that wheelhouse of proof. So excited to try it. Heard good things.
And you're a bourbon guy.
I'm a bourbon guy.
Nice.
I probably know more about bourbon than I do about cigars, unfortunately.
I don't. Well, unless you really know not very much. What did you say? No. I mean, if you don't know a whole lot about bourbon and you're selling cigars for a living, that is dangerous. But if you know a great deal about bourbon, that leaves it pretty open. Yeah,
I can talk about both pretty fluently. But yeah, bourbon is also a passion, so I wanted to get something that was different, something that myself nor you guys have probably had before. So
you said you have not had that.
I have not had this. Okay. No,
you can move those out because you don't need those on the table unless you really want. Start
Never
building
know.
something.
Yeah, a Rector set.
Fine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the bourbon here, and then we'll get into the cigar. I think we're going to talk about the cigar a bit more.
Yeah.
But James E. Pepper, I've had the the 1776 series.
Yep, there's the 1776 bourbon and rye.
I've had those,
as well as bottled and bond bourbon and rye.
Okay,
I have not had those.
And
So
then
this is totally new distillery for me. new bottle. So, I mean, according to the James Pepper website, this juice is roughly 5 years. They said some are as old as 5.5.
Averages out.
Yeah. Mash bill, undisclosed blend of corn, rye, malted barley, malted rye. But right in that like $65 to $70 range, depending on where you get it. So pretty affordable.
Well, and I think the reason that it's not the same mash bill every time because they're blending different whiskeys.
Okay.
So there's 4 different grains. So they have different whiskeys using those grains that they're then blending that together. And so because of that, you'll also get different proofs. So I know the ones we've had at the store, like I've seen as low as 102.
Okay.
So those come in 105. Yeah, they're all going to come in right around that proof point.
So they're true single barrels, yeah?
Well, no, they're not single barrels.
Barrel proof.
Barrel proof,
Barrel proof.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, not single barrel.
They
And
don't
each,
say small batch, but
no, it does have a batch number on the bottle,
Okay.
though. So I'm guessing it is limited to a certain amount of batches.
I do like the bottle. It's good looking. They call it the Decanter bottle.
Decanter style.
Because that's actually what the bottle used to look like back in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Nice.
1880 it says on here. So
That's when James E. Pepper started working at the distillery. His grandfather was the one that started it during the Revolutionary War. He was 3rd generation.
So
James was.
Yes.
So he didn't name it after his grandfather?
No, well, I mean, that's when they also built that distillery.
Not saying I'm not.
So
I'm not saying I don't know the guy.
So
obviously.
he built the distillery in 1880.
Okay.
But the family had been making whiskey and distilling during the Revolutionary War. This distillery was built in 1880. They had 2 at one point.
Really?
The other one is now Woodford's.
They did all right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little lesser known
Okay.
company.
Look at that bug. It's freaky.
Hello.
Yeah, they actually went under in 1967.
1967.
Mhm.
James E. Pepper.
Yep.
So they
because back in the 60s, that's when you had the vodka craze going through.
right.
So like bourbon just absolutely hit the shit. That's when Woodford bought the one distillery, and then the one in Lexington, which is where this one is out of. That one completely shut down.
So did they start it up again, or someone buy the naming rights?
So an entrepreneur bought the rights in 2008, and then started doing research and trying to get that old style that they had. And then in 2017, they started completely remodeling the distillery.
So where are these barrels from?
Theirs. They're theirs.
Okay.
They are. It's
so
their,
they didn't
yeah.
source it to get the company
So
back
initially,
online. Or like
initially, when they started making products, they were sourcing through both Bardstown and MGP. But now that they've been around for long enough, they're
if you said 17, this says a 5-year statement on it. So we're in the wheelhouse.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do we think of this?
I get lots of fruit
On the nose.
Yeah. But not like dark fruit.
No.
No, it's bright on the nose.
Yeah.
But on the palate,
Green apple.
Green apple. All right.
Is it a yes or no, or just an all right?
I can see it. I can see it.
But the palate's totally woody for me.
Yeah.
Like just barrel tanniny. It's not hot. It's not super
That first sip
methanol-y.
The first sip definitely comes across, I think, hot.
Yeah.
That first sip.
After
you get into a little bit.
I got a little bit in the chest, but I kind of feel like that was my dinner. I think it's like a little bit of acid reflux, honestly, a little heartburn.
And 105 for me is it's not too. It's that's kind of at the bottom of where I normally hang out proof wise.
You said you're like what 100 to
115 is kind of the
your sweet spot.
Yeah, but I float around 100 105. But some of the bourbons I like the best are some of the higher proof. I like barrel strength stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when it's uncut, unfiltered. To me, you get the best flavor out of those versus something that's been charcoal filtered or
I got you.
any kind of filtering. So that's just what I prefer.
I think this has got a lot of, like you said, oak, but I've got some spice to it also.
There's a lingering spice.
Yeah.
To it, definitely.
Kind of hangs out a bit. I don't get as much fruit or anything like that. There's a little bit of that classic for me, a little bit of the classic like caramel kind of lingering in there with the oak. I mean, this is a classic bourbon.
Yes.
Like this is,
it would go head to head with
a lot.
Yeah.
This is a lot. There's not anything overpowering. I'd say if anything, the strongest. So I've been sipping on, oddly enough, you said Woodford, Nate. I haven't bought a bottle in a while, but for my birthday, a couple friends bought Woodford Double Oak.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I like that bottle. I hadn't had it in a long time.
It's like a chocolate brownie.
Yeah, but it's as it says, it's very oaky.
Yeah.
So there is some like kind of dark chocolate to it as well.
That's what I got, at least when I had it.
It's just, it had been so long, and I remembered liking it. I'm talking years. I don't think I've had double oak from Woodford in years. So going back to it, it was like, oh wow, this is a little sharper than I remember. This is not as I guess I don't say smooth, but it was just, this is kind of like what I mentally I remember what I thought of like Woodford Double Oak just from my recollection. It doesn't taste like what I have inside that I've sipped on recently, but this is kind of where I'm at with that, is that this is kind of it is oaky, but it's not a sharp, dry oakiness that I will say some Woodford Double Oak has a little bit of that for me. I've had some old stuff. Someone just gave me, and I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I had a little bit of, I'll have to let you guys try this at some point. 2008 barrel of Four Roses.
Ooh.
And it definitely oakier, you know what I mean? But not as sharp. I've had some at some bourbon meetups where it's like, whatever, fucking like 22-year-old, you know, whatever. That's someone, I know someone in the distillery that I've got this and that and blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, that's cool. You try it. And you're like, it's toothpicks. It's like fucking like you said, you joke like you're like licking hardwood. Yeah.
There's quite a few
this
whiskeys
is not
out
there.
I describe as toothpicks in glass.
Yeah. I think it was Wild Turkey. Jimmy Russell said anything past 15 years, you're just grasping at straws trying to get flavor out of it, because it's hard to differentiate any other flavors after a bottle's been in for 15 or more years, and that's kind of where they like to sit. So,
yeah, I think
I've tried bourbons that are older than 15, and that hits the nail on the head. It's you're not getting any more of that fruit or caramel or brown sugar or any of the sweetness that you would normally get out of something that's maybe 10 years or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I grasp too when I look for bourbons that I like.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be, like you said, drinking toothpicks. And
there is still, to me, which I think is interesting because I enjoy obviously certain cigars, certain whiskeys. I still kind of want it to be refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes if you go too heavy into the oak side of that, you know what I mean? It's no longer refreshing anymore. Like it's a okay for a nightcap. But I'm not even salivating anymore, because it's just like immediately it's like you taste all the wood and the oak and everything like this, and then all of a sudden it's just like I'm dry.
Yeah, that happened to me earlier this year when our bar got 4 different bottles of Pappy, 10, 12, 15, and 20, and we did them as a flight.
Mm-hmm. Get
to that 20-year, because the 20-year drops back down to that lower proof, and it's like gnawing on a 2x4. It's just nothing but there's no.
People want it so bad just because of what it is.
Yeah,
in the flavor.
And the 15 was the best one of that entire lineup. 15 was hands down the best.
Got a question here from Ray Cheshire. I'd love to understand why it is your guest says that his sweet spot is 115 proof. Personally, I drink whiskey for the taste, not the amount of alcohol in it, and taste and alcohol content sure aren't connected.
I would just find that like a lot of the bourbons I tend to like seem to be in that proof point, I guess.
So give or take 115.
Yeah, okay. Somewhere in the teens of the hundreds. When I go to my collection and I want something that I know I'm going to enjoy, it tends to go to that direction of proof. But
so it's more
it's not. I've got a Sam Houston that's 90 proof, and it's a 14-year-old bourbon. It's some of the best whiskey that I've ever had. So it's
more of like just like trial and error.
Yeah.
This is
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of a common theme here is that
Yeah.
some of your favorites are give or take 115.
And I know that, like I said, I like barrel strength stuff. I like that. I like that full flavor taste, if you will.
No, I get it.
Not to say that I don't like filtered,
I think as we've talked about on the show, sometimes the bottles it won't drink to the proof, and it goes both ways.
Yep.
But I mean, that's a fair question, I think, from you, Ray. There are people that are like, oh, I want 120, like I needed only barrel proof stuff, and you do a blind taste test. There's some things like not necessarily this, but like around like the 105 that the Whiskey Rose series from Old Forester, I would say, is a kind of an example of that. I feel like some of those don't really add up when you look at like what their proof is and how they drink.
I'd say Booker's is in that same.
Booker's.
A lot of Booker's sits in that 120 to 120, 30. Yeah, 30 is.
Well, I think the latest Booker's was 130.3.
If you were to give that to somebody who's not a typical bourbon drinker, they're not going to be put off by Booker's. So
Right.
Some better than others. Some batches have gotten great ratings and stuff, but for the most part, Booker's sits in that proof.
There was that one 6 years ago. It was cinnamon fireball in a glass. Just good lord.
That's a lot.
It was.
That is an absolute
Especially when
lot.
it was 95 degrees.
Yeah. All right. So, any other thoughts on this, Nate?
So this is, I hadn't had this either. This is something that I'd been eyeballing at our store for a while. Because it keeps coming in, it keeps going out, but we keep getting.
So it's selling.
Oh, it's selling. It's
State of Ohio. This is 65.
64.99 in Ohio.
I was rounding up.
It moves pretty well at our store, at least. I don't know about all locations because I was at a liquor store last Wednesday, and they had stuff sitting on their shelves that we sold out of months ago, just sitting there.
Really?
Yeah, the Chambers Road in Upper Arlington.
Okay.
Kroger. Yeah, just stuff.
Oh, that's right. You said
state
that, yeah.
picks, Booker's, Yellowstones, like just piled up sitting there. They even had chartreuse on the shelf. I haven't seen chartreuse on a shelf in over a year.
What's the color?
Green.
Okay. Also a whiskey then?
No, that's not a whiskey.
Oh.
No, that's a spirit made by the monks that
Oh.
all of a sudden someone
Oh,
here in the US
excuse
goes,
me.
hey, this goes really well in a cocktail. And people bought it up, and there's only 2 monks that actually know the recipe, and they're not increasing production. They're just going to do it the same way.
There's only so many hours in a day for those guys. You know what I mean?
But yeah,
Not really chatty, I think.
like for the longest time, for as far as we knew, it's
Not
just
mostly
for
beer.
wholesale to bars and restaurants.
Mead. I think monks are the mead guys, right?
Mead, beer.
Oh, beer. Okay.
Yeah.
Monks don't talk? Or is
Well,
that
they
like.
can. Some of
Well,
them
I
take a
know they're
bath.
not mutes like by. Okay. Anyways, forget it. I think, like I said, I think this is a nice classic bourbon flavor. I mean, this is nothing too overly complex. I think the $65 mark is probably why it's moving off of your shelf, Nate, with the current market. That it's not, I don't want to say average price, but this is not your kind of average every day. I still think right now it's still around 50, so it's a little north of that, but there's so much out there right now that is 90, 100 and up, and you're just like,
So
if I can find a bottle that I enjoy for 65 and under, I hate saying it,
Could be
but
here every day.
that's it.
well,
Yeah,
I'll tell
I
you
mean,
what, they're 1776. It's $30. I think that stuff is fantastic, both
Mhm.
the bourbon and the rye.
mhm.
What's the age on those?
None of their stuff is age stated.
okay.
Like even the bottled and bond doesn't have an age statement, but being bonded it has to be at least 4.
Yeah.
But like so the 1776, those come in at 30. Both bottled and bonds come in at 55. So then this one's coming in at 65.
I'm the type of person too that I like certain bourbons at a certain time of year. I don't want
Yeah, I
to
can see
drink
that.
something super heavy in the summer when it's 80 or 90, but
Yeah.
I'll have something like that indoors, when it's wintertime or
Mhm.
fall, nice fall nights where I got something a little heavier.
Yeah.
That's typically when I enjoy something that's got viscosity wise and stuff. So this is a great
The other thing that
great pour all year.
the other thing they do is they air season their staves
Okay.
for their barrels. So they actually season them outside in the elements for 18 to 24 months.
before
they construct the barrel.
Are they their own cooperage?
No, that's just what the barrels they are using go through.
Got it. Okay, so they
have a
sourcing
they have a
that.
contract
Okay.
with the cooperage.
Okay, and that's
to
the
make
method
sure
that
that's
they
what
use.
happens to their barrel.
Okay, I was
Still
confused.
American white oak.
Yep. Okay. Has to be.
Yeah.
Say bourbon, yeah,
Yeah.
it's got to be. No, I appreciate you bringing this bottle. We'll get back to it a little bit here. I want to switch gears here on the first part. For those who don't know the show or listening for the first time, we kind of highlight a bottle. We highlight a cigar in the first part. Then we rate them. Part two, we kind of go off on a tangent and see where the night goes after a few more drinks. And we talk a bit about life. So the cigar featured tonight is the Montecristo Espada Signature. And this is from Montecristo, which is by way of Altadis USA. Not as many people know the name Altadis. That's the parent company of all of these. Like I said, some of the brands behind us, like the Montecristo line, the Romeo y Julieta line, the Upman line, the Aging Room, Butera, Camisela, Trinidad, Onyx. A lot.
Big umbrella.
Big umbrella. Montecristo, I would say. Will you tell me, is Montecristo the flagship? What are we looking at here?
Montecristo is definitely the flagship.
Yeah.
H. Upman and Romeo we see as fairly equal. They want to bring Trinidad up into that mix in the coming years. So I would say be on the lookout for Trinidad and some new items, possibly just some extra emphasis on the Trinidad brand in bringing them up to the level of Montecristo, Romeo, and H. Upman. So
Trinidad, I feel like, was kind of such an iconic brand name, obviously from the Cuban market and the history of the cigar world, and it just fell off. I would say Altadis kind of did it a disservice for a while there. That they didn't know what to do with it. I'm trying to remember some of the old blends, but what I think really revitalized it was AJ.
Yeah.
Well, the
Once he got
partnership with
involved,
AJ, right? The Espiritu #1. All Nicaraguan, medium bodied. We featured it several years back now, but when that came out, you guys put a little bit more emphasis behind the brand name. Yeah. You had, that was, I think, the launch, if I remember that correctly, like there was like even like a playlist for the events. There was all sorts of like different swag for it. And then obviously the #2 came out, and then #3 just recently came out within the last probably 12 months, is it?
Yeah.
About. So all very different, but I think that really revitalized it. Montecristo, I feel as though like you got the white label in front of Nate here on the screen, and that I assume is still the best seller.
Montecristo White, Romeo Reserve Real, hands down 2 best sellers in our umbrella.
On paper, very similar blends.
Yep, very similar.
But Montecristo you say is the flagship, but Montecristo, kind of like a lot of these iconic brands, a lot of mild stuff, mild to medium.
Yep.
Even the White series even says it on the box, and creamy this, creamy, and it's like medium bodied. And with what else is out there, I'd say it's on the lighter side of medium, but there's a reason that it's so popular. And so
it's for everybody.
Forward,
it's appealing to the masses when it comes to the everyday smoker.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite blends that's on that lighter side. Because I smoke a lot of full body stuff, but if I want something like especially back when I used to work Saturdays at the cigar shop, Saturday, cup of coffee, first cigar of the day, this Monty White, like either Churchill or #2.
The amount of sizes options as well, in the tins even too, are great sellers in the Monty White line. It gives you all the options,
It does. Fast forward to this Montecristo there was a point around the time, I want to say 6 years ago or so, when we were doing this show for the first time, 6-ish years ago, Altadis took a kind of change in the path. Raphael came in. I don't know exact date on that, but Raphael Nodal came in. He was behind Boutique Blends, which is also Aging Room. Came in, brought his portfolio along with him to a point, and then also took over a very creative / blending and very hands-on. Yeah, he took over a lot of the creative process with a lot of these blends. Along with that, you have what you guys call the Grupo de Maestros. 9 guys.
I believe it's 9. Yeah.
9 guys with decades of experience
Yeah, I think it's
working with
over 100
tobacco.
and 100 and some odd years of experience. So.
Yeah, and so then along with that, you saw a switch of, and my commentary on it, and I'll let you kind of take over, David, is that you had to switch gears because the iconic brands, the Montecristos, your Romeos, even on the general side of things as well, like your Partagas, your Cohibas, you go over to Dominican Republic with Fuente, all of these brand names that were basically like worked their way through and past the cigar boom of the 90s, and then again kind of in the 2010, like 2000s, the boutiques got big. And ironically, boutiques, getting big, I'm just saying as a whole, I'm talking like, boutique cigars were a thing, just like with the bourbon world, like we're talking about, you have a lot of the craft distilleries and whatever you want to call them, boutique distilleries. Those are starting to take over a bit, and people want new stuff. So when Montecristo goes and takes a turn and says, okay, well, what's a hot name right now that we can kind of branch into, keep our iconic brands, but let's talk to some of them. AJ was a big name that a lot of your brands turn to. Some said AJ Fernandez on them, like the Upmans do. Some don't. Some are just, this is a Montecristo Nicaragua. Romeo Julieta Reserva.
1935.
More recently, 1935. H. Upman, 175th. Now you have the 180th. We've reviewed the 175. Onyx has some new life in them. And then this one, the Montecristo Espada, was one that you guys branched off. Who have you used, and what the kind of the story behind this Espada series?
So this is kind of a culmination from a few years ago. I know the Signature was out, 5 years ago?
Not even.
Yeah.
Not even. I think it was 2021. I
believe it's the same tobacco, but Grupo de Maestros, Rafael, and it's actually rolled by Plasencia. So using those, the boutique brands, we have multiple cigars rolled by Plasencia, just with their quality of rollers and everything. It's something that we wanted to kind of relaunch. There's only, I believe, 5,000 boxes of 10, just the one Vitola of the Signature here.
6x55.
Correct.
Which Rafael's been doing with a couple other projects.
Yep. All the Espadas have very unique sizes to them. It makes it unique. It makes it a little bit different experience smoking it. So this is my first time smoking it, which
that's right. Both of you guys,
nice.
This iteration of it. Montecristo Espada series, also all done by Plasencia.
Correct.
So you had the original Espada that came out. I couldn't tell you the years before 2020, and that was followed up by the Oscuro, which is going to be a little bit fuller bodied. It was a darker wrapper.
Full body of cigars that we sell. It's
is
actually
that right?
more full than the aging room in Nicaragua. So.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Also, they had the Estoque, which I think that was a limited run, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
But they've done this Espada series working with Plasencia and established that relationship. In the meantime, from at least my vantage point, Nate, you kind of give me your opinion on it. Plasencia has blown up. When the first Espada came out, from a retail standpoint to the general public, you said, oh, it's made by Plasencia. And they said, what is that? Yeah. Now, fast forward to now, and you say, this is made by Plasencia. And they're like, oh, shit, I got to try that.
Well, and I think...
Even though they've been around since the 1800s.
Yeah, yeah. No, Plasencia, I think they're the number 2 grower and producer behind Aganorsa in Nicaragua. But yeah, they've been doing it a long time, but they've always been under the radar. They've always been making cigars for other people.
Right.
It wasn't until fairly recently where they were like, you know what? We make all these great cigars. We have all this stinking tobacco. What if we took some of this great tobacco and actually made cigars for ourselves with our name? And so they did that. And so all of a sudden Plasencia gets out there with cigars and everyone's like, who's Plasencia?
Right.
And then they start smoking like the Alma Fuerte, the Fuego, even the Reserva. Like they start smoking some of these cigars, and they're like the Reserva's probably their least expensive line, and it comes in at like $9-10 depending on the size. And then you have like they do like the Chinese Zodiac ones, which run about $40.
The unique shapes though is kind of
but yeah, they like the Fuerte, they do that 6-sided hex press in a 6x60. that's like a $22-$23. So all their stuff is on the higher side, above average price point in the industry. But the people that actually sit there and go, oh, let me give it a shot, they're absolutely blown away by it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So people all of a sudden start smoking Plasencia stuff, thinking that they were new. Well, the cigars were, but they knew what they've been doing because they've been doing it for a long time. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh, hey, I got this. You like Plasencia? Cool. I got this one. It's made by Plasencia. Oh, and all of a sudden now those other brands that start using Plasencia to make their cigars, because of the timing with Plasencia making their own stuff and then companies like Altadis using them for some of their stuff, like all of a sudden that gives more credence to these newer blends, like the entire Espada line. People, you say it's made by Plasencia, and already that checks a box and just elevates their expectation of that cigar.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like sitting there, drinking whiskey. I mean, I don't know who your favorite distiller is.
I'd say Heaven Hill.
Okay. So if all of a sudden, there's a bottle that gets put out there, doesn't say Heaven Hill, but then someone who works in the industry is like, oh, you should check out this new bottle. It's made by Heaven Hill. You're going to sit there and go, fuck yeah, let's do it. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. The Romeo Nicaragua.
Yeah.
The Montecristo Nicaragua. All the Espadas are all rolled, made by Plasencia for us.
By Plasencia.
Yeah.
And so you guys have established a relationship with them. They've got factories and fields in both Honduras and Nicaragua. If I'm not mistaken, they fled Cuba originally too, because we did a history on them several years back, and I'm trying to pull from that memory, which is tough. It's a
storied history.
But yeah, so they fled. I think they went to Honduras first, like a lot of them. Then they transplanted some into Nicaragua as well. But I would say some of their more successful blends, from what I can see from my experience, are more of the Nicaraguan blends.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the best coming out of Nicaragua, not only the tobacco, but also just the products. They've done a cool thing, not to get off Montecristo, but some of the things they are now known for is they're doing every 2 years, they're doing a harvest, the cosecha.
The number line, yeah.
Yeah, they had the 146, excuse me, then the 149, now they're 151, doing different blends each time, different projects. And then, like I said, some of the ones that sell really, really well, not only the BS Gold that we make through Plasencia, but the Montecristo Espada series. And you guys really, this one is the least dressed up one out of these series. This has a very large footband, gold footband, saying signature on there, I believe, or what does it say on there?
Yeah, it says Espada limited edition by Montecristo.
And so that's the
with
gold
the
there.
Swords.
Yeah. And then you've got a secondary band underneath the primary, kind of a cream color. And it's got the gold. It says signature on there. And then obviously you have your classic Montecristo band.
The fleur-de-lis on it.
That's right. And like I said, just really elegant. The other Montecristo Espadas, if you've seen them on the shelves, they've got, they're fully dressed. They've got, almost top to bottom as far as that goes. Kind of a pain in the ass to take off,
Christmas
but
present.
it's very, very.
Especially the Robusto, because you have to. Because you
can't light it up.
You have to take off that middle band, which is also perforated, so it might come off twice. But you have to take that off as soon as you light the thing.
But that being said, what do you guys think of this? Since you are lighting this up for the first time, obviously you're drinking along with it, so this is not a fresh palate type of a cigar. But what do you guys think? I know I hyped it up a bit.
I mean, I'm a Nicaraguan guy. This is a Nicaraguan Puro, Esteli binder and filler. Yeah, for price point on this, size, anybody who's a Nicaraguan guy, I think the wrapping quality is the highest it can be, especially for how many boxes we made.
Yeah.
What kind of wrapper is it?
It's
Nicaraguan.
Yeah, it's.
You have to look this up because I didn't know they disclosed all the information on this one.
Yeah,
well,
I've got it here.
We got someone here in some inside information.
Yeah, Jalapa, the Colorado.
Okay.
Claro.
And then Esteli, it says binder and filler.
Yep. Yeah, this is technically a Toro Gordo. Is what the size is.
No, it's not. It's a 55 ring gauge, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So
they gotta have a name. They gotta have a name
whoever
for everything.
Or Plasencia. Toro Gordo is, in my opinion, You got to be at least like a 58, maybe a 56. 55, you're just a Toro-ish or something. I don't know. What do you call that? Nate, what would you call a 6x55?
Toro Extra.
Toro Plus.
Well, because there's some that are like, you have some that are like Robusto Extra because they're like a 54 to 56, even though they're still 5 inch. This is still 6 inch. But
for somebody I lean more towards mild, medium.
Yeah.
I don't really go towards the heavier. This is still very approachable in my opinion. I don't know about you guys, what you lean towards on your everyday, but I go from Monty White all the way to 1935, and I usually float somewhere in between. This is very approachable, like I said, from price as well as flavor. Yeah.
Nate, what do you think?
So, I mean, strength of the cigar, it's definitely a little north of medium.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's quite medium full, but it's got just a little bit of spice to it. There's not a whole lot. And there's also kind of and this is not the bourbon talking, there's also an oakiness or woodiness to the cigar as well.
I can appreciate that.
And then there's an aspect to the finish of it that kind of reminds me a little bit of a couple weeks ago when we had Matt Booth on and we were smoking one of his cigars. There's kind of a cleanliness to the finish, how it doesn't necessarily linger, but you can kind of feel it just cleaning your palate and not this bitter tobacco hanging around. That woodiness that you get just kind of cleans everything off for the next one.
What about the Retro Hill?
So, again, not a whole lot of spice, but it's there. But it's not like a chili. It's more like a softer white pepper type of spice to it. For me, at least. But it's not this, it's definitely not black pepper bomb like the BS Silver is. That's like snorting a line of crushed peppercorns.
It's probably right in between the regular Espada and the Oscuro. It might even be a little less stronger than the Espada itself.
You think?
Yeah. At least, yeah. From a strength standpoint, at least that's how I feel. Like I said, I don't know if it's the bourbon talking, but I know when cigars are strong to me and when I start feeling them. And there's
also like a toasted nuttiness to this.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound weird, but like,
get weird, man. It's fine. Go ahead.
A toasted water chestnut.
I don't know what that tastes like.
I know you can't eat those.
No. Water chestnut, is it like not liquid?
Not the bacon wrapped ones that you get at Christmas time.
Why is it a water chestnut? What's the water part?
That's just the name of that.
Grow in like
I've
marshes.
only ever had water chestnuts in like Chinese food.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Are those water chestnuts or those regular chestnuts?
Well,
is it got like a liquid center?
No.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's not a gusher.
The name would allude to some sort of a Jonathan quoted you there. That's a good one. I'll put up on the screen here.
Yeah, snorting a line of crushed pepper.
Nate Hill.
I said peppercorn.
Oh,
crushed peppercorns.
Yeah.
That's
if you're gonna quote him,
that's the BS Silver.
Quote him, all right, Jonathan. All right, you got to quote him correctly. I feel bad about putting this up there and misleading people. I get a little bit of a kick on the Retro Hail, and maybe that's just the fall weather or whatever it is, but it definitely has a little bit of kick in the Retro Hail. The richness of this cigar is what I think I like about this. And if we're going to compare it on the line, if you guys have had the Montecristo Espada, the Espada Oscuro, I'm not going to talk about the Estoque because I think that was our Estoque. That just didn't. I don't think that was as big of a splash.
You can go 1935. I mean,
you can, but the 35 anniversary original I think is fuller than this by quite a bit.
Too.
A little sharper, a little bit of a punch to that one. This one is just there's richness to the flavor.
Yeah.
The finish, you said, Nate, it's clean, but at the same time, I get a little bit of the woodiness that kind of lingers a bit.
Clean's a good way to put it. I've smoked a lot of cigars where it just sits in your mouth.
Yeah.
And you're taking an extra couple of paces before that next puff. But this, I feel like you can go back to it pretty frequently.
You can, but I've got
it makes you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Pass the bottle if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
But I kind of do have not a linger, but it's like a I get a little bit of a tongue bite from it. Not much, not like a pipe or anything like that, but I think it's a little bit of it has a little richness, but also a little bit of a kick on my my tongue, which again I'm not against because it is a little bit cleaner, like you said, Nate. But I think what I like about this cigar, partially because it's a limited edition, right? You amps up a little bit of the enjoyment and the excitement of smoking something. But the construction is spot on of the ones I've had. The 55 ring gauge is interesting because it's not too thick of a cigar as far as the ring gauge. It's almost deceiving. Smoking as many cigars as most of us do that are on the show, listen to the show. This is a very comfortable size smoking it. And I know it sounds kind of odd there or weird.
For the Espada line, though, too, because most of the Espadas are larger gauge, larger.
They
length,
are.
So
they
I'm
are.
glad they came out with this.
And I like the guard size, which is a 6x50, but it burns a little bit quicker. The flavor's there on both the Espada and the Oscuro. But this one, you said it kind of falls in between them. I would agree with you. It does, but it's more in line, I think, of the strength or the body of the original Espada. However, it's just a richness to it. And I think that in the Espada line, you've got the 5x54, you've got a 7x58 or 6, 8.
I think
6.
it's 8.
And then you've got the 6x50. There's like a size gap there that you kind of this falls into line with. That could be why the flavor
and I'm sure
translates so well.
9 guys in cohorts to develop this, that probably was considered in the construction of the size when they blended it.
Yeah,
that would be my guess is why it's such a unique size. Yeah, very approachable. I'm a big fan.
Nate, are you liking this? Or are you?
I do like it.
For about $18.
I think that's approachable price. I mean, it's just above.
It's definitely in lines with the other 2 Espadas that are on the shelves.
It's not an everyday smoke by any means, but for somebody who's looking for something unique, limited.
This is, I mean, because I love my favorite of the Espada and the Espada Oscuro is just the regular Espada. That medium body, I think, is really approachable. It's got great flavor, nice leather and earthiness to it. I think that's an absolutely fantastic cigar. The Oscuro is nice. It's big, bold, powerful. But the flavor of the regular Espada just kind of hits a little bit better. I just like the balance of that cigar. Even though, like I said, I love Maduros. I love full body, heavy cigars. The 1935 is my favorite cigar. This is one of those. It's like this is kind of for that person who they like the Espada, they like medium body. They're kind of working their way maybe towards fuller body stuff, but they're kind of nervous and hesitant of going full bore into heavy, rich Maduros. So this is like, okay, you like medium body, you had the Espada. All right, this is just a little bit of step up. It's a little bit stronger of a smoke, not too much. I think there's a higher level of complexity to the flavor profile of this cigar than either of the other 2 Espadas.
Yeah, I think this. Just we can get off the Espada train here, but this has the richness of the Oscuro with the body of the Espada is the way I look at this cigar. I think this has got a shit ton of flavor. I think that this construction is there. I've had success selling this cigar in a sense that there's been repeat buyers since we brought it in. We brought in, I think, originally 10 boxes with a follow-up order of 10, and I think that's right. And we're down to like 8 or 9 boxes, and we've had this.
Yeah, and I want to say 3,000 on this total production. 3,000 boxes of
3,000.
So,
and the nice thing about the Espada series, I will say, is that Altadis and Montecristo chose to keep it at a 10 count box. So there is still a lack of the 10 count box options for people. You guys do these very nice. This is actually, and I wish we had a box here to show you guys. It's still kind of in the realm of it, but it's a wooden box. the Espada Oscuro have a more of like a what would you call it, like a
Felt, yeah.
has a felt leathery feel to the
This
top
one's like
of
a
it.
whitewash
This is just
almost.
a whitewash box, kind of going along with the theme of the cream, light cream color on the bands. But 10 count box is very approachable, especially if you are coming in. You know, Ray says he's in Vietnam, $18 is cheap. But that being said, when you're doing a box at like, in especially stores like Tinder Box Easton that does a box 10 or more box discount, this is a buy 9 get 1 box.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. That's not a bad deal in my opinion. So that's where I look at this cigar, and I'm thankful you guys brought it back out, just because I remember enjoying it. I remember a lot of customers enjoying it, and then I look at where we're at now, and the second time, just 3 years later or whatever it is, bringing it back. I don't know. I wonder why they're doing the limited. Is it the wrapper leaf being this jalapa? What do you say, Colorado
Claro, yeah.
You're seeing that more. I think the shade of it is probably where they're holding off, that you probably aren't utilizing this Jalapa Colorado Claro wrapper leaf on a whole lot, just because it is a specific shade and a specific flavor that they're getting out of these crops. So that's the only reason I think that you would find that.
And if you remember, there wasn't a lot of hype or
no, you said like, oh, we have the signature again. I was like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, they dropped it on us. What was that? Late June. Basically just said, hey, this is available now. And
and I remember because you were in the shop talking to Brian and I, and you're just like, have you had it before? I was like, dude, I love that cigar. It's like, yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of how they dropped it on us too. They didn't put a lot of,
Have the sales been good?
Sales been great. Yep.
I think
like you said, where it's I'll have a 5-box order, and then it'll be, hey, that did. Yeah.
Immediately.
Yep. Like I said, I know price point is slightly above average. Everybody's looking to be in that 15 and under mark. Most people in that $13, $12 range. But for somebody who's looking to do something a little bit nicer, this is right in that price point where you haven't hit 20 yet.
Mm-hmm.
You're still getting a quality cigar, Montecristo name, Plasencia name. I think it says a lot. So
I would agree with that. Jonathan, thanks for sharing that on the feed there. Not being in front of the computer, I can't get that up on the screen at the moment without probably messing this up. So I'm going to avoid that. But if you're on the Facebook feed, Jonathan Herring did share a picture of the box here, just so you guys can see it. Yeah, this cigar, again, the Espada series has been well reviewed all over the place, including this show. And I'm curious to see what Nate reviews this at. You've got a history.
By the way, I'm getting a little more fruit on this now that we're
mid
bottle.
You got like a fig or raisin to it?
Yeah, like a little bit of that.
I think the cigar is bringing it out, honestly.
And I'm a big believer in the neck pour. The neck pour is always typically the most bland of the bottle. But as you work your way down, you tend to get more flavor. Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys.
Well, but if you shake that bottle up,
true.
Gone.
True. But different shapes. You look at a High West bottle that's up here.
Mm-hmm.
You look at maybe a 1792 bottle that's this shape. They're going to bring out different flavors. But I do have bottles I know that have gotten down past the label that have really opened up and got that air inside, and it tends to have some different
flavors.
After
sitting for a while, or
like
okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just that oxidation.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've had other bottles where even customers come up and they're like, man, that first pour I had was just hot.
Yep.
And then I went back to it a week later.
Mellow.
And all of a sudden those other flavors came out a little bit better.
And just even sitting here at the table, I mean, you're going to get some of that.
Yeah.
You are. And I think also the second pour is always a little easier. You get more flavor out of it once a lot
less wood, I think, than the original taste that we.
I agree. I'm of the opinion that that's probably the cigar that's kind of muting some of that. Because you said, I think, Nate, that you got a little like almost oakiness out of the cigar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of maybe bringing out a little bit more. It's almost complementing the whiskey a little bit.
Well, I mean, sometimes when you're doing a pairing, especially with food and stuff like wine and food pairing, sometimes you go opposites because the flavor. I mean, you're like sweeter Rieslings with spicy food, like Thai food, something like that is an absolute great pairing. Sometimes you go for similarities, so that way nothing's trying to overshadow. With both of these having kind of that oakiness to them, like your palate's now dull of that oak, so now you're starting to taste what else is there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. What else do we need to know about the Espada series, if anything, David?
Get it while it's here. That's it.
The signature.
Limited.
Are there any other well, we said, what are the other projects with Plasencia? The Romeo Juliet out of the Nicaragua.
Orange, yep, orange and white label.
Yep.
The yellow and white label, the regular Nicaragua, as well as the Montecristo.
The Romeo Connecticut Nicaragua,
Correct.
right? The yellow,
Yes.
yeah. That's a hot seller.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
It's a very hot seller.
Very hot seller.
Connecticut seed, shade grown in Nicaragua for the wrapper, which is unique.
Yep.
Still
took them 5 years to figure out how to do that.
Right.
And then the black label Montecristo Nicaragua as well.
That's good smoke. Used to have a regular who was absolutely hooked on that cigar.
And that one is probably
$12-13
yeah,
for that Toro.
$3 to $4 cheaper than this.
Yeah, it's much. Yeah.
And then obviously the Romeo line, but all Plasencia family.
I think it's the popularity has grown. Like we said, Plasencia's popularity has grown by name, and
which has helped them as well as us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it gets recognition on a level of our brand, Montecristo, one of the most recognizable brands, but also Plasencia doing collaborations, if you will, with other guys. I mean, it's
putting their name on it. I mean, they worked with several companies. One, well before the acquisition, Alec Bradley. Alan Rubin had a great relationship with Plasencia. Almost all their stuff, I feel like, came from either Rice's Cubanos in Honduras or the Plasencia guy, like their Nicaraguan factory. But no one talked about it. Just Alec Bradley products, you know what I mean? And I think that's something that is now changing. I equate it to, I think it's already past it. It kind of peaked already in the bourbon industry with the MGP sourcing.
Yeah.
For a long time, it was just like, they kind of like tried to make it as small a fine print as possible. This is, distilled in Indiana.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, Indiana. And then like all of a sudden it was like MGP. It's like, oh, MGP, I like MGP products. And it's like, oh, this is MGP. And now I think already it's like, I've had MGP. And now you're like, all right, calm down, everyone. Like, because they're the bourbon, I think, craze with some of the sourcing and things like that. It's moving. It's a lot later than the cigar world, but I think it's just moving so much quicker than the cigar world.
I think bourbon and cigars go hand in hand with household names.
Yes.
You've got your household names, your Jacks, your Woodfords, your Old Foresters, your Four Roses, but then you've got brands like Plasencia and boutique brands, but then you've also got smaller distilleries like Watershed and things like that are either collabing or, like you said, they're sourcing barrels to create something totally unique, which I feel like we are starting to branch out and do that, create something unique with maybe a smaller, boutique brand, which I feel like a lot of bourbons are starting to do that, smaller boutique. And
Plasencia kind of reminds me a little bit of Green River Distilling.
Okay.
So Green River, their DSP number is 10. That's one thing we didn't talk about. James Pepper, their DSP number 5.
Wow.
So they're the fifth oldest. Fifth oldest brand in Kentucky. But Green River, 80% of what they distill is contract. 80% of what they make is for other brands. And then it wasn't until recently, and we talked about it a couple years ago when our good friend Aaron Harris was on. He's the master distiller at Green River. Last year their products first came to Ohio. And you had 2 bourbons, a wheated and a rye mash, both 70 corn, 9 malt barley. One's 21 rye, the other's 21 wheat. We did both of them side by side on here. This year, their rye came out, and that's a 95.5. Their foolproof bourbon came out, but most of what they do is contract. So it's one of those things where as people start to drink the stuff with their name on it, and then you find out what else they make for other labels, you're like, oh yeah, this is made by Green River. They're like, oh, the only difference is it's kind of flip-flop. The Green River stuff is $35 and then
For now.
the stuff they make contract work
Yeah.
is a way higher price point. Placencia is kind of the opposite. Their name brand stuff is
It's
usually
20,
higher price.
Yeah, 20.
Yeah, I mean, if this Montecristo Signature was like, if they didn't do this with you guys, you know, and they just came up with this blend, threw it on, you know, limited edition run, they honestly, I think they would charge more for this
Probably
because of the quality of the smoke.
$25 smoke.
I think so. I think so. All right, let's kind of, what is the number Nate Hale is referring to? I'll throw that up on the screen, Nate, if you want to.
So I was actually pulling it up. So it's a distiller. So every distillery is assigned a number, and
Is it based on when that distillery
Yes.
came
Yes.
to being
Yeah.
registered as a distillery?
yes,
Okay.
So like DSP. So the first is DSP, and then the next two letters are going to be the state initials. So, for example, this one's going to be KY for
Right.
Kentucky. Ohio will be OH,
Mhm.
and then you have the number. And right now, those numbers are in the 20,000s. So so it hasn't quite hit 30,000, but that's how many distilleries there have been that have gotten the distiller's permit, and then their state, and then the number. So
the names that were before Prohibition,
Mhm.
like even if you revitalize the brand, you keep that
Elijah
number.
Craig, Elijah Craig has got to be.
Heaven Hill's number one.
I was going to say Elijah Craig is number one. It has to be because it's.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know that's like the oldest.
Yeah, so
distillery.
they keep that, right? So it carries on. That's why this is. Would you say this was 5?
This is 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, you talked about how it was kind of it died out. You know, basically went under, and then they revitalized it. So you're able to keep that. Green River, I think, was the same way.
Yeah, Green River
Yeah.
is 10.
Yeah, but it has not been around the entire time.
No,
We can talk about years of companies. I mean, I think cigars and bourbon go hand in hand. I mean, Montecristo is
Yeah.
the lineage of what H. Upman, Montecristo,
Well,
and
Chapman just hit
Romeo.
180. Romeo, you said, is coming up to 150.
150. And I mean, a lot of brands in the cigar industry are well into the 100-year mark.
Yeah, you can trademark it. The tricky part about the cigar thing, and you guys at Altadis, obviously, at one point, your parent company, Imperial, if I'm not mistaken, was also the parent company of
So like Habanos and all
Habanos
the Cuban
SA.
counterpoints, yeah.
About half of that, and the other half was the Cuban government owned the other half of Habanos SA when that was formed, and then that more recently, your parent company sold, got out of that part of it. There is some confusion. We'll just really touch on this briefly because you and General, there's a couple others like Particulares is bought by someone else. There's a handful of others, Cuban ones that people bought the naming rights of, but Altadis and General, I'd say, have the lion's share of it. Yeah. Obviously the most controversial, and this is still, I think it's a 3-decade court case about the name Cohiba with STG in General, but you guys with Montecristo is kind of the parent companies was the same. So it was kind of like the Montecristo, the Romeo Julieta, the H. Upman, all this stuff. It carried over the Cuban heritage in story, and I think originally, my personal opinion, there was a little bit of attempt. One of the reasons that Montecristos, especially Romeos, the best sellers were the mild ones, is because they were trying to duplicate, in a sense, the Cuban
counterparts. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
counterparts. I mean, not trying to make it taste like them, but to say like, oh, if you like this, the Montecristo Cuban, you'll probably like this. And you get past
appeal to the masses.
Exactly. So there is a little bit of a parallel there, but there's a lot of heritage there. All right, let's do the ratings here for part 1. Not that button, this button. So we do, for you guys new to the show, we rate the whiskey, we rate the cigar, and we rate the pairing. And 10 is the best. So 3 different ratings here. And David, as the guest, we're going to ask you to go first. Starting with the James E. Pepper barrel strength. Barrel proof.
For my own, I'd say personal palate, I'd like a little more of that viscosity. I want it to sit on my tongue a little bit more.
Okay.
I like bourbons that are viscous. I like them to sit a little bit longer. The taste, I think, is great. The price point is good. I definitely think it has opened up since we first started. I'm trying to think of what I would put above it and below it, but I think it falls kind of just above average, maybe in that like 6.5 range for me. But yeah, like I said, it's got good flavor. The proof is good. Yeah, I'd say just above average.
Okay.
6.5. And then cigar wise, like I said, I'd take into account price when I
don't take into account that Paul Waller or Maria or anyone might listen. They like this show. Talking about the bottle.
Yeah, I would consider this. I think Nate hit the nail on the head with that clean. It's just I got to go back to that. I really do. It's such a good analogy to put into cigar tasting. I've never thought about cigars in that manner of what they do to, I guess, your jowls is the best way to put it. So it really is a clean smoke. I'll probably say 7.5 on this, and then together I think they complement each other well. So overall, I think it's same thing, 7.5. So
well, and I've only had, I'd say, that I can remember because that whole clean aspect when it comes to some of the cigars, like that's a fairly newer thing that I picked up on some cigars, but there's like 4 that I've smoked.
But it doesn't feel like there's peanut butter on the roof of your mouth. Like
I wouldn't
after
know
every
peanuts.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Again,
I've seen. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is water chestnuts are not actually a nut.
Correct.
They're an aquatic veg.
It's like a bamboo.
Well, I get you. See, there's the aquatic thing. That
like
makes
a bamboo
sense.
shoot.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Bamboo nuts.
Yes.
Why don't they just call it that?
All right. So on the whiskey, I'm gonna do because I had a couple sips before I ever lit up the cigar, and those first few sips, it drank a little hotter than 105. Kind of like with David, I drink a lot of 110 to 130 stuff. This one is one of those where when I hear barrel proof, I'm expecting a sort of richness because they haven't diluted it.
That's exactly how I feel.
I'm expecting these really thick, heavy notes, but get a lot of oak right off the rip. There's a lot of oak to it. It's not until as you go on, and maybe it's the pairing as well, that you start picking up some of the other flavors that are in this bottle. I think initially the nose was better than the palate, because the nose, you had some floral, you had some citrus going on, but then that oak dominated the palate, and then that spice just kind of hung around for a little bit, which you would expect for something coming in at anything that was labeled as barrel strength. You would kind of expect something to linger quite a bit.
5 years is fairly young too. I mean, it's
but 5 years is not really enough to start diving into those caramel and butterscotch notes that you get with some older stuff. I think $65 for a barrel strength, that's not a bad price point, I think, for this bottle. Also, it's labeled as a decanter bottle, so if you wanted to,
no one's using this as a decanter.
Probably not.
You're not doing an infinity bottle with this?
No offense. No, I mean, you could. It's a good looking one. I'm not saying that. I mean, it's got the etchings, right? That's where I think you really get that decanter look.
It was well done. I mean, it was thought out.
Absolutely.
So,
well, and then they even put.
I think decanter. I think what's that? Woodford. The starts with a B. Baccarat.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think a decanter like Baccarat or Louis XIII.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like, oh yeah, this is made out of like crystal
Baccarat
that was
crystal,
formed in
it's
in space, and so
it takes 5 days to make each bottle. But like we didn't talk about they actually list some flavor notes on this.
Oh, what do they say?
So uncut, unfiltered, rich, full flavor,
Yeah, here's the
balanced with on their website. Well, if you actually go onto
This
their
is Breaking
website,
Bourbon, yeah.
yeah. I like Breaking Bourbon.
if you go onto their website, they have some flavor notes which I saved as well. Balanced. I don't know
Apricot,
about
my God.
balanced.
Mhm.
It's kind of oak heavy, but it says balanced with notes of caramel, toasted oak, rye, and malt. Definitely get the oak and rye.
Yeah.
Those are the two I would say dominant flavors. I almost hit your glass. I think it's a solid bottle. I'd say 7.5 on the bottle. It's definitely one I would say is worth trying, especially if you like something that's got some of those traditional bourbon flavors, like the vanilla and oak notes.
God
to
forbid you like traditional bourbon flavors.
Yeah, that's not popular anymore.
I think it's a
Yeah,
great. I mean,
That's so 2018.
for people who aren't in that 120 proof category, I think it's a good bottle.
Mhm.
7.5 on that. I'd say on the cigar for me, I'll go 8.5 on the cigar.
You hear that?
I do enjoy the cigar. I would, like I said earlier, I would say of the Espada trio that's out there, because I forgot about the Estoque until Steve said something. And then it also made me think of the 12-year, which was not the blue, which was not part
Epic.
Epic 12.
Epic blue.
Yeah.
Who made that for you guys?
It wasn't.
Wasn't Placencia.
No, that's Dominican. I think that's one of your factories.
Yeah. Yep.
I
like the 12-year better than the.
Of the Espada line, I would definitely say that the original Espada is probably my favorite of the three that we've been talking about all night. But this one, like I said, there's a lot of complexity to this one. That clean finish that's there, that kind of woodiness that's on the finish, subtle spice, like
you said the retrohale was nice and
for me.
and light.
For me, the retrohale was pleasant. It was a softer, like white pepper that I alluded to, not like not snorting black peppercorns, which you get off the BS Silver.
Do a bigger retrohale. Like start with a retrohale. See what happens.
I'll do that when you're doing your
you got to do a shot and then retro.
But no, I think this is definitely a cigar that if you're a fan of Montecristo and especially the Espada line, this is definitely one that while supplies last, you definitely need to get your hands on because it's very different from the other two.
What do you sell the regular Espada at?
I think the Robusto starts out at 15.
Yeah, I think
$16.
Yeah, with Ohio tax, you're 15 to 16. And then it goes up to
the Churchill's like 18.
So we didn't put a
this
crazy,
is in line with it.
Okay, so
I
that's
think
what
when
I was
this
wondering.
first
Even though it
came
is
out,
special edition.
when this first came out, it was still around that. I want to say we sold this for around $16.95. It might have been $18.95. I can't remember because I updated the pricing, but I think it was pretty darn close. You guys, this was a little bit more expensive, if I recall correctly, when it was first released, and I think 21 ish. And then now it's average price for the line.
Yeah, because I mean everything from Montecristo has gone up within the last couple of years. So
Everyone.
Yeah. But it still falls in line with the rest of the Espada series.
Yeah.
I think they're not sitting there going, "Hey, here's a limited edition. It's $25."
Yeah.
Like,
I'm glad they did that from my perspective and your perspective. I'm glad that they made it.
As far as the pairing, as you get into both the bottle and the cigar, I think the cigar allows you to pull so much more flavor out of this whiskey.
Yeah.
Going from the cigar to the whiskey, all of a sudden you start picking out those caramel and malt notes that are on the neck tag that I never got initially. There's now that richer sweetness,
some of that dark fruit.
Less of the tannin coming through. And so I think they complement each other really well. So I gave 7.5 on the whiskey, 8.5 on the cigar. I'll say the pairing of the two of them together is better than either one by itself. So I'll go
Niner.
I'll go 8.75.
Oh, barely. All right.
I'll go 8.75. Like
Niner in there. Calling from a walkie-talkie.
Yeah. All right, Steve. What do you think?
Oh, John.
I'm just loving Jonathan's just getting into it tonight. Well, there are a lot of decimals, so he's drinking a lot.
Well, and that's also one of the things that sometimes subconsciously I think about, like, ooh, what can I rate this in order to make Jonathan drink more?
Can you put 2 decimals in one number? No, if only.
All
All
right.
right.
I had 3 decimals there.
Tim Dodge is also keeping track here. 3 decimals from Nate. The whiskey, the James E. Pepper, this is the barrel proof decanter bottle. The marketing behind it, I think, is great. I think, again, it's very eye-catching. This is a good-looking bottle. When you look at it on the shelf, I think if you see a $65 price tag underneath it, you might be surprised. I want to say almost like deterred from it, because it almost like is such a nice looking bottle. You'd expect it to be like, if it's only $65, what's wrong with it?
I think what hurts this bottle is there's not enough of the bourbon community that knows Old Pepper Distillery, the James Pepper Distillery.
Yeah, the history is there.
They only have 5 products out there.
Well, on the James E. Pepper, the 1776 looks like a budget bottle.
It does.
So when this comes out and it's sitting next to it, it's okay. This is double the price of the regular stuff. It's great. I mean, that's not too high. So you're still in the ballpark of a kind of an everyday whiskey, right? The $50 price point, in my opinion, at the MSRP. But I'll give this bottle 7.5. I think this is good. I mean, $65. I'm kind of
whiskey flavors.
Yeah, like it's funny because like I'm good with that. Like, and I know you guys seem to be as well. But at 105, this is actually, especially on the second glass, it's a little dangerous because it is smoothing out a little bit, right? I mean, this is something, again, I'll get to the pairing here, but this is smoothing out a little bit. I guess I'm sometimes boring, especially. So we've had a lot of the local distillery watershed, some of their fall finishing series, and they're very different things. You know what I mean? So the uniqueness of it is it's really fun to do on the show and to try different stuff. But for me, when I just go for a pour, I want it to taste like bourbon. Sometimes that's it. This hits that. So I'm like a 7.5, almost 8 on this, because for $65, this is a nice everyday pour. If someone likes bourbon, regular,
pair it with a lot of different
bourbon flavored bourbon. This reminds me of like the Dennis Leary skit, coffee flavored coffee. If you guys ever heard that, if you haven't heard that, check it out. I think it's the same album. I think this is No Cure for Cancer. This is the same album as the Asshole song, but it's like this whole thing about trying to find coffee flavor coffee. And that's with all the finishings, with all the uniqueness of the aging and the sourcing and the throwing the staves in back with the bourbon to age it with wood staves in it and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I love all this stuff, but sometimes I want bourbon flavored bourbon.
What they're good at.
This is for you. If you like the flavor of bourbon in general, I think you'll like this.
I think this is a product that, as the distillery, now that it's been revitalized in 2017, as some of their stock continues to age and get more richness out of it, we might see this product
10-year bourbon or something
start to be a little bit older of a blend.
Yeah.
And so it might start creeping up a couple more years, and which I think would be a very wise decision for them to do. Sell it while they can, but hold some of that stock back, continue to age it. And then this bottle, as they continue to do it, some of the later batch, like you probably pointed out, this is batch 43. Some of the batches that come down the pipe might be a little richer, a little heavier, and have more of some of those bourbon notes that guys look for in a product. And so this is something that it's a newer product for them, but it could potentially get better as they get more age and experience.
I'll say this, going off of the bourbon flavor bourbon, the best sellers in the world are what you said, the counterpart that bought Woodford, bought one of their distilleries or whatever. This is in that realm. $65. It's a little higher than your everydays, like Woodford and everything. Yeah, it's a lot when you do a lot of retro, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I was getting.
Wow.
Hello.
Ooh, that Man, that'll clean them out.
Jonathan, for you, I'm going to say it's an 8 instead of a 7.5, so you don't have to drink on that one. The cigar, I'm going to give a 9. I think this, I started the show by saying this is one of my favorite Montecristos, if not my favorite Montecristo. I really enjoy this cigar. It's balanced. It's very rich construction. I think this is my third. My third signature Espada, and very consistent throughout. This is I really do enjoy this.
Well,
really enjoy this.
I think that should be expected when you're paying $18.
Yes,
for this cigar.
Yeah, not upset about that price point, especially when I'm smoking the Espada series.
Yeah,
I think
construction's just
absolutely. So that's
that entire line. I think
that's where I'm at with this. Is that I think this falls in line with the Montecristo brand name, and especially with the Espada series, because it's appropriately priced for that, and it is different enough from the Espada and the Oscuro, but it fits very beautifully, I think, in between those two, as a hopefully someday, Raphael, if you're listening, which you're not, but if you were, yeah, they should have this up at the Aruba. What's down there? TAA. Yeah, this should be up playing right now. Come on, guys. But yeah, I think this is something that should be hopefully more regular production going forward. Plasencia does use a Colorado Claro on their Fuerte line as well. I don't know if it's the same or similar wrapper, but I mean, they hopefully can produce more wrapper if that's the holdup here. I don't know. The pairing, I'm with you guys. I think I'm kind of in between. For you, Jonathan, I'll give you an 8.5 on the pairing. I think this is something that goes very well together. As we've smoked the cigar, and as we've had more than just the one glass, I think they have complemented each other. I think the kind of woodiness or oakiness from the cigar has brought out more, because it's kind of muted it from the glass, and I think that's something that is nice to see, nice to have sometimes, that it does actually complement as opposed to stand up to one another, as opposed to muting each other completely. I think you still get a lot of the characteristics, a lot of the flavor profile from each of them, but I think that they have complemented each other and almost kind of married together a little bit. So I'll give it an 8.5. That being said, what else are we? I mean, you can't divulge everything we talked about today, but there's a lot of projects on the horizon here with Altadis, and I think, and again, I don't think you can really. The
M I can.
The M we can talk about.
We can talk about the M.
So Montecristo's next project coming out soon is
December. It's the Montecristo M. It's got a 20-year Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper on it. 20 years old, with Nicaraguan binder filler from our buddy AJ. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a little bit higher in the price point. There'll be multiple sizes. There'll be box 5s actually. So it'll be like the white box 5 count. Mm-hmm. I was able to try this down in Florida a few weeks ago. Raphael is currently at the TAA talking about it. Beautiful branding, similar to the signature. Actually, it's going to be white, gold, and the M is a bright red, to go back to the Montecristo roots. But once again, I got to try the cigar in Robusto size, I believe it was.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
You guys will be impressed. And this is not a special edition. Just to reiterate, this is going to be an everyday release. They want to have this on shelves, so that everybody can have a chance to have it. But once again, it will be at a slightly higher price point than anything we've released Montecristo wise. But that's probably the biggest thing that we're going to wrap up 2024 with from Altadis. There are other things in the works from Altadis that I probably can't go into, but definitely stay tuned.
Be touching most of the brands, though, it seems like, from what we talked about today.
They are going to hit the big three for sure. Montecristo, Romeo, and H. Upman will all get at least a piece of the pie in terms of love from Altadis with releases, and just emphasis on the brands. But the first and foremost is that Montecristo M. It will be probably available at retailers mid-December.
Be a great holiday present for your cigar smoker or for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the boxing, the branding, the label, everything was meticulously designed and done intricately. it says a lot about what like the time and the effort
Yeah.
they put into it. So
hopefully we can get you back on to review that if schedules work and if you guys have
I'd love to.
the availability for that. But
I'd love to get your guys' opinion on that, like live, and be able to smoke that together and see what you think, because I was impressed with it when I smoked it. I had it with bourbon as well. So
you had it with the Peerless, or no, that wasn't that.
No, that was the 180th.
That was 180th.
Peerless.
That's right.
That was a great pairing too. Just from the H. Upman line, the 180th is obviously out. It's in stores. It is also limited to Box 10 Churchill 5000, and then some stores have Toro size, which that is a humidor only release.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a humidor of 50 Toros. Some stores have it, and it's a different experience, the Toro versus the Churchill. I would put that H. Upman 180th in my top 5 for this year that I've smoked.
Still 2 full boxes at Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. I think there's 2 full boxes, and then and some change of the 180th.
And that one's price point, you've got it at
22.
Okay,
I think $22.95 if I'm not mistaken.
For a Churchill,
yeah,
I think that's a reasonable price once again, and
good feedback on it so far.
Nicaraguan Puro. AJ and Raphael, same thing.
If you had the 175th in the past, if you had the 175th in the past, this is going to be a different blend, the 180th. But you can read up on it if you're curious. But definitely check that one out. If your local brick and mortar has it, again, if you're in the Columbus area, Tinder Box Easton has that. I want to thank Tinder Box Easton, Altadis USA, David as well for the featured cigar tonight, and most episodes we have an Altadis cigar for the second part of the sponsorship. We appreciate your guys' support always. And also check out the BS Cigar Company, Plasencia, as we've been talking about in length tonight, that they make the BS Gold. And then Espinosa Cigars, good friend of the show as well, makes the BS Silver. So check those out. And with that, guys, we're going to take a quick intermission. We'll stay live on this. If you're listening to the audio, click over to part 2. But cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. And we will be back for part 2.
Gotta go with the bell.
Boom. So we stay live, but we're in a break. Is everyone good? Does anyone need to use the
Did you see me talking about the legs?
Yes.
That literally look like the bottle?
Yes,
So
that is cool.
is
Yeah, that's kinda neat.
great marketing there.
It is.
I doubt that was on
I know.
purpose.
And that's when I say viscosity, I just go I think of other bourbons that I know that I like.
Yeah.
When they're thick on the palate. I want something that's like, I guess I put it in car terms, like 10W40, like some
Higher viscosity,
and it doesn't have to be higher proof. I just like something that's gonna like sit on my tongue.
more oily.
Exactly, that
Yeah.
oiliness. And I
Yeah.
like Nate said, maybe eventually we'll get a 10-year barrel strength bourbon from them. And that I mean, with some more age, this 5-year could be darker. I mean, this, if you look at it, this is a light amber.
I thought about sitting in the bottle. That looks
It looks
light
young,
colored.
you know.
Yeah,
I think it does, but I also think it's somewhat intentional. I'm gonna take another pour here
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
absolutely.
so on their website, for the nose, they list toasted oak and walnuts.
Okay, not water chestnuts.
No.
Okay.
On the palate, they say
Bamboo nuts.
Well, no, I said I got that on the palate.
Okay.
On the palate, they list oak, no shit, dried dark fruits, and marzipan.
What does that taste like?
Marzipan is going to be kind of almond.
Okay.
Finish medium to long with notes of creamy vanilla, citrus peel, and nutmeg.
I get the citrus. I guess nutmeg is more of that holiday flavor.
It's that rye spice.
Yeah.
So David had mentioned very early on. So you got corn, you got rye, then you got malted rye and malted barley. So not all 4 of those go into each barrel that they're making. So my guess is on one, you've got corn, rye, malted barley. Another one, you've got corn, rye, malted rye, maybe shifting in the percentages. Those are separate products. However many they're just making out of those 4 grains. Those are separate barrels that then blend together. And whatever the aggregate of those barrels are is what this is. And honestly, when we first got this in at the store and I saw barrel strength, and I think the first batch we had was like 102, I was like, wow, that seems low for barrel proof. 102, 105, like
I didn't even look at the band until after I already bought it, and then I saw 52.7. Same as you. I felt that was extremely low for a barrel strength, barrel proof bourbon. And then, like I said, now that we're looking at it, this does
look on the light side.
Yeah, it's a light amber at best.
Yeah, this hasn't really pulled a whole lot of color from the barrel.
I didn't even know 1776 was part of this until you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
What?
So you have 1776 bourbon and rye.
Can you make any comparisons to the regular bourbon to this? Is there any notes or any? I mean, has it got that wood? Does it have that wood?
No, honestly, I think the bourbon comes across the 1776. I think actually comes across a little richer, even though it's at a lower proof.
Yeah,
I think it's 90, somewhere around there. But it's smooth. It's real smooth. It doesn't have the bite that this one does. I think both the bourbon and rye, they're great on their own. I think they'd also be really good as a mixer, say an old fashioned or Manhattan, respectively.
Yep.
When we got in the bottled and bonds, so you have a bottled and bond bourbon, bottled and bond rye.
Oh, okay.
Those are both $54.99. So $29.99 on the 1776, $54.99 on the two bottled and bonds. I actually bought the rye, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So, but that explains then why this one's going to be a step up in price. Is it is a barrel proof. They don't make as much of this, so it is a little bit more limited in terms of its availability.
And for people who don't know the term barrel proof, there's a lot of people interchange barrel proof with barrel strength. Barrel proof, I believe, is what it goes in the barrel.
No.
What it comes.
No. Barrel proof and barrel strength are the same. Full proof.
Okay.
Full proof is what it went into the barrel at.
And then it comes out at the same proof.
No. So what they'll do, like if say something goes into a barrel at 117, and when it comes out, it's 125.
They leave it at that?
No.
They dumb it down to 117.
Okay. To match the entry proof. That's full proof.
So barrel proof.
Barrel proof is right out of the barrel or the tank. So if they take 100 barrels, dump them into a tank, and then bottle it at that, whatever that
they
aggregate,
don't mess with the proof.
Correct.
Whatever that aggregate is of all those barrels, that is barrel strength. And
there's a lot of terms that get kind of interchanged when they're not supposed to be.
And then if you see single barrel barrel proof, that's literally one barrel straight from the barrel. So like water.
Like Blanton's has straight from the barrel. It's also another term for barrel proof,
and that could be, again, being 5 year, start part 2 here, but 5 years, the stated right year.
They said 5.5.
It's at the average is just over 5 years for this.
Okay. So you could have a little bit older, but probably not much at this point. Yeah, it could be an evolving product, or this could be the middle ground one. There could be some,
listen, for the everyday
10-year coming out. James E. Pepper 10-year could come out, you know what I mean, and be $80. You just never know what they can do with it, but yeah. All right.
Yeah, when you say decanter, I think Louis the 13th. I think of
like a certain crystal, but I think
it definitely fits the bill. This is not a 1792 bottle. It's 1792, but clearly jazzed up.
It is, and I can appreciate that. Like I've got some glasses, so I always think of like Waterford crystal. And I've got some Waterford crystal glasses, but they were a gift from my brother's family years ago. But it's not like the expensive ones. But if you hold it, it's like crystal. It's heavy. It's got some of the etching on it, so they look really nice. But then you can spend a shit ton on Waterford on their higher end
Oh,
stuff.
we got Tiffany crystal glasses
Tiffany.
for our
Yeah.
wedding. And same thing. You can feel.
They're fun to drink out of.
We have a product in our cabinet at work. It comes with 2 Baccarat crystal tumblers.
Oh.
It's a 37-year blended Scotch with 2 Baccarat crystal tumblers.
What's that go for?
$1,700.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Deal.
Yeah.
the bottles a pint. It's a $375. It's not even a $750.
Cool.
But
Yeah,
it comes
thanks.
in a
Really doing
great,
you a solid.
comes in a great looking white box that 2 panels to open
If you're looking for a last minute gift,
for the podcast.
Christmas vacation. If you're looking for any last minute gift
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. Venmo at Bourbon and
Yes.
BS, 1,700. That should cover it.
Yes.
We'll cover the tax.
Ohio State tax.
That's right.
Good old
We'll
Uncle
cover
Sam
it.
gets his cut.
7.5. All right, let's get going here.
No, I think you put it like you both nailed it. It's a bourbon's bourbon. It's
That was Steve. That was
it's-
definitely
it's in with the cigar. Like I said, you guys had both inputs on.
I think
That's why I like doing this. What you
Yeah.
taste and what I taste, and different verbiage and different. Like I don't get any fruit on this on the nose anymore.
No,
Not at all.
gone.
Like I'm starting to pull some of those, like he said, walnuts. It's crazy when you read a review or you read a description of bourbon, what you start to pick up.
It's right in your head
Yeah.
now.
So
that's why we saved that for later.
Jonathan Heron did say that they like half wheel on the cigar. Said I forget what else, but loads of black pepper. And I was like,
maybe on the retro.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's what's his name, Charlie.
I don't typically retro just because I don't
Really?
have the nasal fortitude to not sit there and do what you did when you retroed it. So
I
try to.
can't not retro hail
yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
All right.
I still have to contact you.
Oh no.
I think with bourbon, it's best to smell it with your nose and your mouth open. That's the one thing that I did learn was like mouth and nose open. It hits all the senses.
Oh, yeah.
With cigars, I'm not there with a full
mouth open for spirits,
Yeah.
mouth closed for wine.
Okay.
Or beer.
I always inhale when I drink wine, though. I learned that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to part 2.
Cool.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 327. This is part 2, Beyond the BS, and we are still here with David Welch in the garage from Altadis USA. First episode. How's it going so far?
Having a great time.
Cool.
Love bourbon. Love cigars.
You're in the right place.
Beautiful fall evening.
Nate's layering up over there. He's got the
Yes.
can't see the logo because the Montecristo massive logo. There you go. You can leave that off part 2.
Yeah, it's all right.
Not the shirt.
We know who's here.
Yeah. We got plenty of signage
Yes.
Floating around here.
I just wanted to make sure we knew who was behind this one.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so part 2. So we're still smoking, all of us, yes?
Yes.
Which
Nate's
does,
farther along than both of us.
I would say, I mean, again, the construction on the cigar, 6x55. This is a nice, slow smoking cigar. You're going to go round 2 back to back.
Why not?
I can't think of a reason. It's fine. I was just curious. But yeah, so the Montecristo Espada Signature. Listen to part 1 if you're just tuning in, or if you listen to the audio and you just clicked on part 2. Part 1, we talk about this cigar. We talk about the James E. Pepper barrel proof decanter bottle. Review it, talk in great lengths about that, and also especially of the Montecristo brand and this project that Altadis has done. This cigar is available for those that haven't listened to part 1 or just tuning in. It's available at your retailers now. Limited edition, the Montecristo Espada Signature. It is available at our sponsor, Tinder Box at Easton. I think there's about, call it 8 to 10 boxes still available of 10. So we're down to 100 or less cigars of this on the shelf. Retail MSRP, I think, is probably like what, just south of 18,
Yes.
like 1750 or something like that. So depending
Steal.
on your local taxes, you're going to be at, I call it probably 18 to 19 in most states. You'll find this. And again, I don't think you'll find this very easily online. You're going to have to go brick and mortar style for this. So
Yes.
definitely encourage it. It got great ratings in part 1. Part 2, we do a little bit different than most podcasts here in the cigar and the bourbon world. We do kind of more of a structured, without any real structure to the conversation. And we're going to be talking circle of friends. This is something that David was supposed to be on a month ago, I think it
give or
was.
take.
It's supposed to be the Wednesday before you went on vacation.
Correct. No,
Yeah.
no, this is the one where
Surgery.
Kristen had surgery. So
Yeah.
it was actually about 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. And so we had to reschedule it. We appreciate everyone understanding, David, especially you, for understanding that. And for all that are interested, Kristen is doing very great. Full recovery from the surgery. Scars are healing very well. She's very happy about it. So, yeah, shout out to Kristen for being a champ on that. And so this is something that you and I were kind of sending messages back and forth on topics of what we could talk about. And I labeled it a circle of friends because I sent you a Instagram videos, Andrew Huberman, and someone read a quote. He said, read that again. And it said something along the lines of, I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but he said, don't eat at the table with people that you wouldn't starve with.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I thought kind of kick-started. You sent me another clip from a TV show that you love that was similar. Do you remember kind of the gist of that?
I want to say it was Boy Meets World.
It was
something along the lines of don't let others dictate kind of what you do. Don't let their opinion dictate what you do, because you'll never grow as a person if you only act in terms of how others will view what you're doing.
Let's see if I can pull it up here. There you go. I'm not going to play it, but I will read it as it comes across here. If you let people's perception of you dictate your behavior, you will never grow as a person. But if you leave yourself open to experience, despite what others think, then you will learn and grow. I like that.
I've tried to, I would say, live by that. I've always been a person to kind of step behind those lines, if you will, of what are people going to think if I do X, Y, Z. And the more that you act outside of that, I think you as a person is definitely open to that growth. You know, for instance, this podcast, I've always been semi opposed to speaking in front of, whether it's just two people or, you know, live people. Growing up, I never liked presenting in front of classrooms and this and that. And
now you're in sales.
And now I'm in sales. Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks
I
perfectly.
feel, though, if you're confident about what you're saying, it goes a long way. The term fake it till you make it. You don't always have to be the smartest person in the room, but if you know a little bit about something, if you can pick up on things that people are either wearing or whatever, if I see a ball cap from the Cubs or whatever, that's the easiest way to get some common ground in sales. It's not necessarily something about cigars or bourbon, but as a salesperson, I always try and pick up on what people are wearing or something they mention, or whether you guys have sports playing in the, you know, whatnot. There's always something to be able to pick up on from other people's lives and what they enjoy. Maybe it's your shirt, maybe it's your shoes, if you got running shoes on, or things of that nature. So
Stay in front of the mic.
But yeah, that's
yeah. I think in your line of work, especially, we've had some salespeople in the like cigar world, for example, where it's like they don't really, like, you can tell they don't smoke cigars, and or they do, like, kind of, but they're just salespeople. You can tell, like, that's their approach. They talk about
order takers,
but you can go a step further than that. You can talk about, like, the deals. Like, you're very well versed on what the company has going on. You know what I mean? You talk about it, you read the sheets, you know the deals and all that stuff, but that only goes so far. I think there's that genuine sense of you want to do well, you want your clients to do well, and you're not just trying to make the sale by forcing it. And I think that goes along with kind of the quote that you had sent me about, you know, letting others' behavior dictate what you do. And we'll get to this whole, like, circle of friends thing, because I think as you gain more experience in life, you'll get a little bit further down the road with that. But sometimes I think with you in sales, with people in life, I think if you are letting other people's behavior dictate yours, you don't even know. You're not asking questions. You're not even being really a part of the equation. You're assuming based on what you're observing, that's what you are expected to do. That's what they're expecting out of you. That's what they want from this interaction. They want you to be a certain way, and you are just missing all of the real cues because you haven't asked any questions. You haven't shown any interest. You haven't like kind of looked around, and it's like, we had a customer today and he had a White Sox hat on. And it's like, I know he's not a White Sox fan. We have customers come in with certain ball caps, and you're like, oh, are you a White Sox fan? Or anymore, I'm just like, or you just buy it because of it matches your outfit. Just kind of busting balls. It goes both ways. Sometimes you're like, no, I'm a diehard White Sox fan or whatever it is, and other times it's like, no, just because I like the hat. And you're like, cool. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, but you're engaging. And I think sometimes more often than not, you're going to have these people where you're letting the outside influence really dictate on how you conduct yourself in business and personal life and everything else. Those are going to be short-term interactions because you're not really bringing any value. They already have that in their circle, right? So now, like, what do they need you for?
Yep.
You're not bringing any authenticity to your presentation in life. Nate, when you heard those two first quotes, is there anything that comes to your mind?
Say them again.
Don't eat at a table with people that you wouldn't starve with.
I remember seeing that video.
Okay.
I remember seeing that video and hearing that, and I don't know where that
really chokes you up. I know.
Yeah.
It's all right, man. Let it out. You take your time, get it out.
No, I think there are a lot of people out there
Daycare next door now.
There are a lot of people out there that desire so much to be liked by everybody that they will sacrifice who they are just to appease other people.
Yes.
And by doing so, they're
putting yourself last.
By doing so, they're being disingenuous to themselves.
Right.
They're not who they want to be. They're not the kind of person they want to be. They're not doing the things that they want to do. Like, oh, I have a group of friends. They're going out. I really want to hang out with them. I don't like doing that, but I want to hang out with them. So I'll go do that. And it's fine to do that to a point where you're being sociable and you're hanging out with people and you're building relationships. But if you're sacrificing who you are or your comfort or your sense of who you are, that can be a detriment to yourself or to your mental state or whatever. Yeah, watch them come in. Yep. And eventually, I think we all hit a point. Some people earlier in life, some people later in life, where we stop caring so much about what everyone else thinks and only start focusing on what the people that matter to us think.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, over the years, my circle has become much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a point in my life where I had a big circle of friends. But the value of the people in that circle has changed. There are people that, were close to me that I was friends with, and, we're still friendly, but I don't necessarily interact with those people anymore. It's not like I cut them off or disowned them and I never want to hang out or never see them again. But there was a point with each one of those people where I'm like, what are you adding to my life? Are you adding stress? Are you adding joy? Like support is one. We've talked about it before, where if you have that friend that every time you're together, all they say is woe is me, and it just drags you down. Eventually you're like, I want to be there for the person. I want to be an example and help them out, but fuck, they don't even want to help themselves. Like sometimes you have that conversation, sometimes you don't, and you're just like, you know what, you need to figure shit out. If you want to talk to me, fine, I'll talk to you and help you through it. But if all you're going to sit there is bitch about everything, Like, I don't want to be a part of that. Go. Good luck to you. But yeah, even when I got married, I had such a small circle of friends. I'm sitting there going, I don't even know if I'll have 3 groomsmen at my wedding.
Let's do what I'm doing. Just have none.
Solo dolo.
Right.
Well, because I remember sitting there trying to figure out who my groomsmen were going to be for my wedding, and I got married here in Westerville, and my best friend lived in DC. My next best friend lived in Cincinnati. And then it was like, well, and then I just had a friend at that time who moved to Utah. And I was like, who
moves to Utah, right?
They moved back rather quickly.
Yeah, there you go. That seems appropriate there.
Yeah.
No offense to any listeners in Utah, of course. It's a worldwide show here.
But ended up my dad was my best man for my wedding.
Good choice.
And it ended up being a great choice. But those friends that I had when I was in college, my best friend from college, he's not on social media at all. And when he had changed his number, he lost mine. And I don't think I've spoken to him since 6 months after he got married. And I would love to reconnect with him. I'd love to know what he's doing. But at the same time, it hasn't necessarily changed anything going on in my life. I would love for him to be a part of that. But at the same time, it's like, all right, I'm going to focus on the people that are providing and contributing something.
No, absolutely. I think as life goes on, it's natural that you're not only do you care a little bit less. And I think that's, I don't want to say overused. I think that when people are like, you're the get off my lawn old man, you know what I mean? Where you're just like, I don't need anyone. I don't care what anyone thinks. Right. But I don't know if that's necessarily the way to go. There was another one that I sent you, David, was that Dana White quote where basically
I don't care.
He started the quote by, or the comment by, it's like, I don't give a shit about what you think of me. I know who I am and I'm confident. And Dana White, of all people, at this point in his life and his career, he should be pretty confident in what he's doing in life, right? Overall. Even he went through a health transformation more recently. And so that's obviously filled in a space in his life that he probably wasn't as confident in. Might have thought he was, but getting older and everything, he altered his path on that. But then he switched gears a little bit, that it's the circle of people in his life. It's a smaller circle that he cares about what they think. And that's different for everyone. Obviously we've been doing this show for quite some time. We have the Bourbon and BS community page. We're all in the service industry in a sense, sales, retail, or otherwise. You're a traveling salesperson at this point, David. You do care to a point of what other people think about certain things. Yeah. To your core, David, I'm not going to speak for you, but I can imagine the same as us. Like if a customer comes in, I'm going to be myself, not going to hit 100% of the people, but I'm also not going to be dialed up to necessarily 10 or 11 most of the time. I still have a little bit of the sales mentality where it's like, I'm going to mirror a little bit of the customer, try to get their personality just because that's the job. Right. But to a point, when we'll have a customer, even like a regular that I'm not a huge fan of. And that's pretty rare, honestly, in this industry and this job I've been doing for almost 12 years now. But it's like there's one that said the other day, like jokingly, the customer's always right. And I was like, well, honestly, you do this for long enough or you live life long enough, that's not always the case. And that's going to be something where it's like, I'm not going to necessarily argue with a customer, that it's not always worth it. I'm not going to try to be a jerk or anything like that. Like if they say something on a personal level that I don't agree with, I'm not going to take the bait in every political conversation. Every time they say something that it strikes me poorly. But at the same time, it's like if you are disrespectful, if you're rude, if you are out of line, I don't own the shop, but I gotta take faith that Brian, who owns the shop, who's my boss, that I've worked with for 12 years almost, known longer than that he would have my back to a point. If a customer were to say something that, and Brian would come to me and say, what happened. Let's hear your side of it or whatever. Because I think that goes with your experience. It's like in the business sense, it's the same thing that translates to the personal. You know what I mean? If you are friends, like you said, with someone and you just fade away, that happens. And sometimes at first you're upset with it. You're offended by it. Like, really? That's it? You know what I mean? When I went through some different life changes over the last several years, I had social circles based around like a location, like, like say I was a regular somewhere or did a certain hobby. And as soon as you disengage from that, because life changes a little bit, not just proximity wise, like I didn't move away, but it's like, I'm not going in and doing that as often. Priority
shift.
At first it was like, really, that's all we were friends because of this. And it's like, not so much, because if you do run into that person, you talk to them. I've had the experience that it is usually just the fact that it's just priorities in life. You faded away. Yeah. Sometimes there have been, in the more recent years, there's been a little bit of not my super close friends, because I've got some that share different views, especially politically, the things that have gone around the world through COVID and business closures and all the things that we went through, the vaccines and all that stuff. The ones that I feel I'm confident enough that I can be myself and talk things through, I learned very quickly all over again in this arena in life that not everyone can talk things through. Yeah. You can't always walk away like, no, I disagree with you. I respect what you're saying. We have a different opinion on this. There have been, I think, I would venture to guess that in a lot of people's lives over the last 5 years, call it, that relationships have severed because of the way of the world and what we've gone through, which the circle of friends may have gotten a little bit tighter. But I think that's where it gets to the point now, especially in this country, not to get with the election and everything, but coming around this time around with everything going on in this country and the world, I give less of a shit about what you think if I have an opinion on something. And I'm not going to ram it down your throat. I'm not going to like argue with you all the time. But if you're telling me something and I disagree with it, I'm like, well, I can tell you what I think about it. Or no, I think, I'm not confrontational, but at the same time, I'm not going to like get emotionally invested in something anymore. There was a time that I would, and anymore it's just like, no, I'm not. This is not worth it. It's just not fucking worth it sometimes.
Worth what? That's the thing. Like
my time.
Your time, your stress, your energy, that kind of thing. Like, you can have a disagreement with people and have a cordial conversation and discuss different viewpoints and still come out, still remaining friends or friendly, and still have a great relationship with that person. If you can sit there and talk it out, I think one of the things that we have lost as a society is an ability to have conversations and disagreements and be able to actually talk and articulate those differences.
Can I comment on that?
Go ahead.
I think, and then continue. I think there's always been that. I think that there's actually more forms of communication now, so it's easier to have disagreements on it. Where before, your neighbors and stuff, like you didn't talk politics, you didn't talk all this stuff. It's super
easy to have a disagreement with people when you're hiding behind this thing.
It's not even, yes, but it's not just the hiding behind it. It's the fact that it's inundating you. Like you had more small talk conversations. You had, if you knew that person, it's because you lived there, you went to the same church, you had kids at the same school, whatever it might be. But it was like, you start talking about like bullshit, like everyday life. Now it's like, oh, I'm Facebook friends with my neighbor or this person that, our kids are best friends. And man, we get along great. We just had dinner with them, all this stuff. And then you see a Facebook post and you're like, really? Tim said that? And you start talking to your wife or whatever else. And all of a sudden now there's this thing in the background. And then you see him again at the next, function. And there's a lot more of this on edge, I think, because now you know a little bit more what they're doing or thinking when you're not just talking about the next fucking brownie sale or whatever it is that your kids are doing. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a little bit of that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think with communication and technology out there, people are much more willing to put their opinion out there.
Talk shit.
They're all talk shit. Yeah.
I mean,
people are much more, because there's no consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
If you sit there and you've got 500 social media friends and you put something out there controversial and you lose 100, you're like, okay,
Whatever.
so I don't give a shit. I still got 400. I don't care. But if you actually sat there and you were with, say, your close circle of friends,
You'd be a
and
little
all-
reserved about.
oh, and like the three of us, if the three of us were really close friends, and then all of a sudden we got into a heated argument, like it could come to a point where there's shoving, there's pushing, punching, or it might just sit there and go, you know what, dude? Fuck you. I hope to never see you again.
Hey, let's get together next time. Let's drink less bourbon. That also could be a sometimes.
I'll say something about this job. I feel like this job, this industry has allowed me to be the most amount of myself that I've ever been.
How so?
And
Facts. This industry.
I came from the car industry, spent almost 10 years of my life in that industry. And I don't want to say that I was fake because I wasn't.
Car industry
I
is
didn't
sales,
have,
right?
It is.
It's known
And I
for
didn't sell
integrity.
cars. I was in the service side. Yeah. I was in this. I was in the service side.
Okay,
So
okay.
I was servicing needs more than once. Like I need to get this fixed.
Mhm.
This is broken. I'm not going to drive my car away unless I fix it. So it was a
Or
little
you
bit
can't.
correct. So it was a little bit better in that way. But being myself, you run into people on a daily basis that this is the worst day. I mean, that you got to tell them they have a $1,500 bill or a $2,000 bill or this, that, and the other. It's not good news.
Or they can't order because
Correct. Back ordered items. Your car is going to be down for a week.
Yeah.
So trying to reason with them or get on their same level was something I had to learn and something that I had to adjust to from a friend standpoint, from a human being to a human being standpoint. But this job, when I go into a store, when I go into a retailer, when I go into a shop, I feel like I can be the most amount of myself as a person to relate to people on a regular basis. And that says a lot about what I do for a living.
Yeah.
I know people don't have that privilege to truly say that I can be myself every day at my job. I mean, my wife knows this very well, is that doing something just to pay the bills is different than doing something because you actually like to do it. So car business paid the bills. Cigar business gives me in full circle of holisticness in friendships, family, my kids. I would see my kids an hour a night for the first 2 years of my daughter's life. I spend weekends with them now. I spend afternoons with them now. I do family things. I do friend things. I feel like as a person, I am more on a positive note because I enjoy what I do. I don't take stresses from work home. I don't have lingering customers in the back of my mind that are taking up my train of thought and whatnot. It's something to be said about enjoying what you do on a daily basis and projecting that towards the people that are in your circle and them seeing that. I've had a few of my close friends say, you know what, like I see that you were meant for this. I see that you genuinely enjoy. Absolutely. I've grown immensely in the last 6 months, just as a person, as a dad, as a husband, as just a friend. I know that I probably wasn't the best of friend to my circle because I wasn't in a good place.
You didn't have time either.
Yeah, I'm sure that you guys have felt this way where you were going through something in life and you didn't project the positivity towards your friends. So you were maybe that person that you were talking about where it was negative. I'm trying to be the opposite. I'm trying to build up the people around me now and be that positive person. But yeah, like the best thing I can say is that I've been allowed to be the most me in this job, meeting people, hearing their stories, learning about their journey. Like you said, you've been doing it for 12 years. Obviously you're in the cigar in bourbon industry and
exactly longer than I have.
Exactly. So
I've done retail and I was a cigar rep.
So
as well.
Hearing people's stories, hearing where they come from, just relating on those levels is something I genuinely enjoy doing when I go retailer to retailer, shop to shop, lounge to lounge.
That was one of the coolest things for me. I had a probably slightly bigger territory when I was a rep than what you have. I had 7.5 states that I covered. So I got to meet a lot of different people, different backgrounds,
Sure.
different walks of life. And it was, when I get to the hotel at night, and I'd have, because my wife was a little hesitant when I first took that job as a sales rep. She was concerned about how our relationship was going to be with me, because literally it was leave Monday morning, come home Friday night type of thing. So one of the things, we had done is, okay, I'll let you know when I get to the hotel. We can call each other. We can talk to each other.
Communication, absolutely.
But I would sit there and I would tell her about some of the conversations I had, some of the shops I went to, some of the people I met, and different experiences. So then it came when she still works at OSU, but when OSU was on spring break and she was also taking additional classes, she's like, I want to go on the road with you. And I was like, okay, I'm going up to Michigan, and I've got 2 events in Michigan, then I got an event back here in Ohio. She wanted to go because she had heard some of these stories. And then so I'm taking her to some of these places that I've told stories about. Mm-hmm. And she loved meeting those people. And what was kind of ironic as well, or maybe irony was a bad word, but anytime she'd go to the stores with me, she would just kind of sit in a chair, kind of hang out by herself. But then whoever I was talking to, or maybe customers sitting there, would start talking to her and like, oh no, I'm here with my husband. He's a sales rep. And all of a sudden they're having conversations and she's meeting these people, or the owner of the store is over there talking to her, and they're sending me messages like, it was so great to meet your wife. Like, that was so cool. She's such a cool person. Like, well, she's cooler than I am.
Second. Is that we're not doing that.
No.
Anyone else want to chime in online? Go ahead. Start a poll. Who's cooler, Jess or Nate? Results are in.
But
faster than the election.
But no, it was one of those things. Like, even my dad had reservations about me taking that job. I've told the story before. You probably haven't heard it, David. I was driving up to Chicago for my job interview to be a cigar rep. And my dad called me as we were driving up I-65 and told him what we were doing. I was like, yeah, I'm going up to Chicago for an interview. Oh, is this for that cigar job? Yeah, it is. And my dad goes, I hope it goes well, but not too well. Because my dad, and I found it out later, my dad didn't think I was going to be happy being on the road all the time. But then I was doing an event here in Columbus, and my dad came to that event. And afterwards, my dad's like, I didn't realize how passionate you were about this. So when I was like, well, this is what you said when I was driving to the interview. And he's like, I didn't know how much you wanted this and how happy you were going to be doing it. Like, he was in his mind, he was looking out for me, me wanting to do, because I left a career that was part of my major in college. And so he kind of, and it was with a company when I first got that job, he's like, oh, that's one of those companies. When you get in there, you stay there until you retire. That's one of those companies you want to work for and stay with. No, it's not. But that's the way he was. He stayed with the same company from the time he was 18 until he retired at 55.
Yep. I took my dad to my first ever event as well. It's funny you say that. And he's been with his company. His employee number is like 4 or 5. And he works for a company that has over 300 people now. So
much like James E. Pepper.
Exactly, from 1880. Now, my parents are both employees at their companies well over 30 years. So I've jumped a few times in the car industry. So it was a lot to present this to them and tell them that I'd be doing the same thing on the road, selling cigars. They knew I had a passion for this, but much like you said, where your parents are always going to have reservations about your best interest. So I took him to the first event and we had a 2-hour drive home, and he's like, I get it. I get it. I can tell that you're passionate about this. I'm almost baffled at your knowledge, just as small of time you've been with this company and just knowing other brands and things like that, and just your ability to talk to people that are complete strangers. He's like, I would, he just doesn't have that ability all the time.
And what impact does that then have
correct
on your relationship with that person?
Yep.
Like it strengthens it. It makes it better.
Absolutely.
And
I think it's an understanding.
It felt
there,
good
right? I mean, that's obviously it.
It felt good to kind of see him in my atmosphere and have him see me do my job, because I know what he does. He's an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's been through the seasons, the elements, coming home when it's cold, home when it's hot, carrying a tool belt, this and that. And this is a luxury. I don't have to work in the elements. I don't have to do that. And
it's not a blue collar job.
Correct. So I've always appreciated what they gave me, and I felt good to have him in that room with me. So, but it was a cool experience to have your dad kind of on the job with you, if you will, and
especially so different from what he does.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And the guy that was, at the lounge where we did the event, there was another gentleman there who was basically their general manager. I mean, he spoke to my dad the whole time, and it was just kind of going back and forth. And
he probably loved that too.
And they found terms that they could relate on. I mean, the guy was from my area. He grew up in Canton. My dad knew areas that he was from, and it was a very cool experience to be able to, like I said, to do that. So, but
I think it's cool, like, because you have that understanding there, right? You got to see you. And you said something that actually I would imagine if he knows you growing up, you said that you're not used to being in that kind of an atmosphere, speaking in front of people, being
correct.
Kind of so like for those that haven't been to a cigar event, I mean, there was a lot of time there where I think still to this day, it's depending on who you are as a rep, like you're filling shoes. I know Charlie Ward was in this spot for a little while, but like a Josh Bentley, who's people that watch the show, they know who he is. They've been to the Tinder Box or to a Smoking 10 event or whatever it is. Altadis doesn't have a face, right? It's not like a Perdomo who's been on the show. It's not Rocky Patel. There's not a family name on this. So it's really easy that if you are like an Altadis rep or a rep that doesn't have a person behind it as a figurehead, a Fuente, there's no identity to it, right? So for the shops you're going into, you are the face. If you're good, there's a lot of different ways, and I know all the shops are different, but in this industry, I think if you go in there during business hours when no one's in there and you're only doing is talking to the order taker, you're the buyer, owner of the shop, whoever it is, and that's your only relationship to that shop, it's now up to that person, the staff, and everyone else to sell your product.
Correct.
Or the advertising on a mass level, right? But now all of a sudden, if you start going into a shop and it's like, hey, David, what's going on? And you know some regulars, you start putting it like so I don't know how many spots are available, but tomorrow night, if you guys are listening live, you're in the Columbus area, a couple more spots, maybe for the prime rib dinner, but you're going to be there.
I will.
So that's where you're going into it. If your dad's there and it's like, he sees you interacting with all these people that you don't like, you're meeting, what's your name? Like I'm David, like you are, like all those like sales techniques that are actually the reason they're sales techniques is because that's how you should interact with people a lot of times in everyday life. Introduce yourself, kind of have that. He may not have known you had it in you. You know what I mean? Because that wasn't you
probably
growing up.
No, and I like
you're
that
an introvert. I don't know what your style is, but it's like you having just these open conversations, and your dad has known you your entire life
as being this reserved. I take a back seat. I don't like to be.
And like I said, I didn't know. Like since I've met you, like we've had good conversations and all that stuff. So
we can relate.
We can relate, yeah.
So,
but I think there is that where I think that's something that is cool for your circle of friends, or your inner circle.
And I know
to see you.
I got all them watching tonight too, so it was exciting to me to get them to watch the podcast.
Is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast.
Doing well.
Yeah. So. I just got to speak into the microphone.
Yes.
According
it's
to
all
Nate.
right.
So
it's all right. That's always the biggest thing.
To all David's friends and family and everyone else out
I just
there.
need one of those,
subscribe
like,
and
MJ
share the. Yeah, we need to get that on there.
earpieces.
What you said, Steve, like Altadis isn't a brand that has a face.
I mean, Rafa, yes and no, but like it's not Nick Perdomo, it's not Arturo.
If we
Fuente,
had-
it's not,
How much of the country is Rafael going around touring,
Correct.
doing events at?
not much.
Like when people don't look at Rafael Nadal and go, "Oh,
Altadis.
Altadis."
No, they go
So-
aging room.
Yeah.
Well,
if
some
anything,
people
so.
do,
But
but,
that-
not everyday shops.
Yeah. But so that's where it's an opportunity for the sales reps. The sales reps become the face
face.
of that company to their customers, to
Correct.
their shops. And so you're a company without a face. You've got a great reputation, been around a long time. You've got that going for you. But you get to the point where when you're that kind of company, when people think Montecristo, you want them to think you.
Me, exactly.
That and so how do you and so that's the thing, like you got to figure out how do you do that, and what does it take to get to that point? Because I remember when I first started in the cigar industry, actually even before that, when I first started smoking cigars, and there was a particular rep, there was a particular brand of cigars that I absolutely loved, and whenever the rep that covered where around Ohio was. So I went to school in Northwest Ohio. So if he was in Columbus or Cincinnati, I was getting a group of guys going, "Hey, there's a cigar event in Cincinnati with this rep. Like, you guys want to go?" And we'd carpool and go down there for the event. So to me, even though that was a particular company that the name of the company was the name of the founder, it was that particular rep who to me was the face of the company. I wasn't going around necessarily because of the cigars. I was going around because of the rep as well. That was the first cigar event I ever went to, was with that rep. And so I wanted to go around and go to any of the events nearby. And when I say nearby, I mean within an hour and a half that person was going to. That became the face of the company.
Yeah.
For me.
So let me ask you this, David. Put you on the spot here. First podcast.
Please do.
Topic that we talked about. So with the conversations we had with the comments or like the clips or whatever we were talking about, where you don't necessarily you shouldn't necessarily care what people think of you, right? You let others' expectations dictate the way you live life. How does that translate to what you're doing as a job? Where you say that you can be the most yourself now, which ironically is a little bit of your adapted behavior for work, right?
Yeah.
But you can still feel a little bit more comfortable possibly being yourself in this adapted behavior of being a little bit more outgoing and all that stuff. Not necessarily caring what people think about you, but at the same time, you don't want to not do well at your job.
Yeah.
At the same time, just layering this on, you don't want to necessarily leave food off the table for your family, but you also don't want to sacrifice who you are. How does that look? How does that work?
I'm genuinely proud when people ask what I do for a living to tell them what industry I'm in.
Okay.
I always try to participate in fundraising golf scrambles.
Okay.
And when you're in that scramble, it's a couple other guys, it's people you don't know. Oh, you make small talk. What do you do for a living? Oh, I sell cigars. What does that entail? Like, you go around with a cigar and you sell it? No, it's like I work for Montecristo, Romeo, H. Upman. There's a sense of fulfillment when you tell people that you work for a company that has these brands that I never really had before. Like when I say I work in the car industry, people are like, hold up, like, are you a shiesty car salesman type of deal?
What dealer did you work for?
I was a Ford. I worked for Ford and I worked for GM.
Both good on the service side for you.
Decent.
I have a GM. I can tell you, it's great for the service department.
Yeah.
I know them well. Sadly,
I bet you do. Got all your maintenance
Surprised they
in.
don't know my credit card number at this point.
I was never proud to say that I did that. And I was always up. I was up to management. I was in management.
Service manager.
Yep.
Okay.
And even at that point, I still wasn't genuinely happy to say what I do for a living. And this job, this company, the bosses that I have been in my position before, which is very nice to be relatable, and there's no micromanagement.
Paul Waller, by the way, was when I first started in this industry
Was
12 years ago.
my territory.
That's when he first got into
That's how he
this
cut
side
his
of it.
teeth.
So to see him work his way up the chain is obviously inspiration. It's in going back to what you said about a company that you can see yourself at for longevity. I never wanted to be in the car business for 30 years. I just felt like it was going to be one of those things that just like beat at you and kind of like grind away at your soul.
Oh, it does.
The cigar industry, absolutely. I've been in it since February. I'm already here doing a podcast with people that I've met in the industry, events. You know, I met Rocky. I've met a couple other of the industry names, if you will, Espinoza.
You're at the 10 event, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the culture that I want to be a part of, I guess
like
is the
that.
best way to put it. I'm very much a person who likes the cigar, the bourbon. You know, most of the guys that are in this culture like golf. They're guys that like to sit around and do what we're doing right now. You know, when I have cigars, I have it with my dad, my best friends. And it's either sitting down on a patio out back or it's on the golf course. But you're sharing stories. When I sit down at shops that have lounges, I don't make it about me. Tell me your story. How long you been here? How long's the shop been?
You
here?
want to be a fly on the wall.
Correct. I want to know, because I have shops that are, you know, I've got one in Mansfield that's been around since the 30s. I've got, you know, some down in Kentucky that are some of the oldest in the country, and it's been passed down through different ownership. You know, hearing stories about old products that we used to have before my time, and you know, just to circle back to what we talked about, I feel a sense of pride about telling people what I do for a living, and I think that goes a long way.
I've had experiences where, like, when I used to do door-to-door sales in the energy, so electricity. Yeah. I went
selling vacuums.
Yeah. No, I wasn't selling Kirby. No, I worked for AEP, and I started out doing door-to-door sales for electricity and natural gas. Not something I ever saw myself doing, not something I wanted to do, not something I would ever want to do again. But if I was hanging out at a cigar shop, even a cigar shop I was a frequent visitor of, or I was just hanging around other people, and you all of a sudden get that question.
Tell them about your experience.
What do you do for a living? Well, here's what I do. And all of a sudden, like, well, what is that? And then I would sit there and say, and all of a sudden I would just go into not even a sales pitch, but more of an educational presentation. Because for a brief period of time, I was also a substitute teacher. My natural inclination is to teach.
And here's this whiteboard with
no. My natural inclination is a teacher. And so I would, you asked me a question. Let me answer it the best way I can. And I would just go into explaining what that industry was and how it came to be, what I do. I wouldn't even necessarily go into what I do. I would just explain why I'm doing what I do. And my wife would also, she'd be a fly on the wall. She'd be sitting there next to me just reading a book. But she would sit there and watch me have this conversation. And she would always say, when you talk about what you do, you can see a passion. I didn't want to be a door-to-door salesman. Like I said, I don't ever want to do that again. But when someone sat there and asked me what I did, all right,
you knew it.
This is what I do. And I would explain it.
What's your address? I'll stop by tomorrow.
Yeah.
When
I would explain it to them just so that person had the understanding of what this is.
When I came back from Florida, I gave my wife basically like the 411 on everything Altadis for the next 6 months. And she's like,
stop.
How long is this meeting? I was like, I don't know, a couple hours. She's like, and you retained all of this? I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And I see why you do what you do, basically.
Yeah.
What she said. Like I just regurgitated all of it. I like you said, it was more of a presentation to my wife about what I learned and how excited I was for new product. And that to me lets me know that like you said, you have a passion for what you do, you understand it, you have a way of distributing that information to a retailer or just a consumer. I mean, I can put things in words for the consumer to understand, whether they like mild, medium, heavy, or I can put things in the retailer to understand, here's price point, here's what you're going to make, here's what sells well, here's how much of this. I like to think I can relate to both avenues of that triangle, so that everybody can understand who Altadis is and what we represent, what we bring to the table. So,
and you are the Ford or GM of the cigar industry, honestly. Like, I mean, if you want to do a parallel there, I mean, you are the big boy.
Correct.
Which sometimes can have a negative connotation to it.
I don't want to put us on a pedestal, but I would say Montecristo and Romeo are the two most recognizable brands.
Very much iconic, yeah.
I think back when we had Josh Bentley on before, he actually said Montecristo. That word is the most recognized name in all of cigars.
Yeah.
Say that, and
the name Montecristo. You say Montecristo, and people know what you're talking about.
Cochiba.
Yeah.
Montecristo.
Yeah, Montecristo. The greasy one. But yeah, it's been an interesting 5 years for me. Transition wise from
Jonathan's got some hits out there tonight.
Well, I know that's been an interesting thing for me in my recent career change, being in wine and liquor. Like, before I was on that salesman side of things with cigars, at least. And even though more so I'm on the retail side, I interact with so many of the sales reps that are trying to sell us product that now I start to think of it more like the buyer side, even though I don't do any of the buying. Yeah. I actually got asked the other day at work. It was kind of a highlight. Ray's got lots of praise for you.
Yeah, man, he's listening.
Thanks, Ray.
Like that.
He loves you. But no, the other day at work, there was a rep that came in, and my boss actually looked at me, and he's like, "Hey, I want you to do the order with that rep." And I heard him say it. I had to walk over to his desk and make sure I heard him correctly, because he's never asked me to do that before.
Do what?
To actually place an order with a sales rep. And I walked over and I'm like, "What'd you say?" And he's like, "No, that rep, you go ahead and do the order." Because that's something that I talked about doing last year. Just because with what my role and responsibility is, and what I got hired on to do originally, that's something that I've talked about wanting to do whenever my boss was out. And so he sat, and I wanted to make sure I heard him, because that's the first time that's come up. Is like,
is that just for liquor?
Wine,
okay.
Which is what we make most of our money on in that department.
Nice.
I was like, I want to make sure I heard you. Me? Okay, cool. Me? I was like, and so my boss looked at the rep and goes, "Hey, go ahead and do the order with Nate." And the rep goes, "Oh, you don't need anything." I was like, "Damn it!" I was like, "Damn it! Here was my chance, and we don't need but 3 bottles on the shelf."
That's probably why I said that. No, it's good.
But no, I mean, it was one of those things where, even though I didn't get to do it, I was afforded the opportunity,
the responsibility,
which that made, even though I didn't get to do it, just being asked to do it, that made my day. So, being on that side, like it's one of those unique things where I've been the retailer, I've been a seller, and then all of a sudden I get asked to be the buyer. And so it's that whole triangle. It's like,
you're learning.
It's kind of coming together a little. So there are times where I'll stand there with my boss and ask him questions, like, what's your thinking behind this? Another one recently that kind of reinvigorated a passion for what I do. and I know you had asked about it, Steve, and you and I didn't get to have the conversation about it because you were on your trip. But a rep came in, and my boss was like, "Hey, get over here. We're going to taste these." And then my boss goes, "Rank them."
To you.
He asked me to rank the wines that we tasted. And then I said, "Well, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, all right, why do you like that one? And I explained why. And he's like, "Well, I'm flipped on your 1 and 2. Here's why I think. This is why this is my number 1. It's not because I like this one more. It's because I think this one will sell better.
There you go.
You like this one more, and it is the better product, but this one might sell better." And then my boss goes, "You know what? Go ahead and give us a case of each." And so I'm like, "Cool, challenge accepted."
Yeah.
I gotta outsell your bottle.
There you go.
But it's one of those things, like, I could sit there and, things be stagnant, not feel like I'm doing anything, not feel like I'm doing what I'm worth. Like, there are a lot of days where I sit there and I'm like, am I worth what they're paying me?
Absolutely.
Am I doing
every day?
Am I, like,
100%.
Yeah.
but
Nate is worth
but all of a
what you're
sudden
paying
something
him
like that happened
to
It's
whoever's
like,
listening.
like it's one, but it was just one of those things where it, like I said, it kind of revitalized and put a new energy and spark that it had kind of faded a little bit because I wasn't getting that opportunity. Now all of a sudden I was given that opportunity in that sense of not necessarily respect, but I want to hear your opinion. I'm going to value your opinion on this. That goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what I do, same thing. If people want to know, have you had the 180th? Have you had the signature? I'll be straight up with them.
Now you can say yes.
Correct.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I speak highly
And
of
also
the
thank you for
180th.
the
I
cigar.
speak highly of the signature. But my everyday, I really like the Romeo Nicaragua. I'm an 1875 guy. That's what I smoked before I got into this industry. But going back to what you say, I like that my title is territory manager. It's not, there's nothing about sales. It's even you could put it as like a relationship manager if you wanted to. I mean, I take orders, but I also create orders. You know, it's what do you need, but what also do I need you to have as well too. So, it's you play this ping pong game.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I'm out XYZ, but you don't have this, which I think would do really well here. Making suggestions on different products based on demographic area, based on geography. It's my responsibility to know that stuff and know what sells, what price point you guys do well with, gauging that for different shops. I'm not going to put H. Upman 180, a $22 cigar in a shop of mine that's basically, in a gas station or something like that. It's just knowing your demographic, knowing who's going to do well with what. And that's something that I've kind of slowly been able to kind of absorb.
You kind of have to be a chameleon.
Correct. Yep. You got to sit behind the scenes, but also, be able to adapt to maybe this isn't going to be best for your shop, and have those conversations, have the hard conversation of like, I know you've seen the Montecristo M. I know you've seen the 180th. I know you've seen, let's say the Diamante. These are all high level cigars. Do you want it in your shop just to show people you have it, or do you think that it will actually sell well? So it's having those conversations, maybe pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying, hey, let's try this first, and going from there. So
got some comments here, obviously, about you guys and talking about work. And I think that
Romeo 1875. Sorry.
Yeah. You
Classics.
smoked the 1875s. Yeah, for sure. Ray says, meanwhile, back at the circle of friends, the topic, I was going to say to what you're talking about there is that I think you have a lot of bosses. You know what I mean? You have the customers.
Well, I guess 3. Yeah. You look at the customer, and then
I mean, obviously, the everyone kind of pays your bills, right? You have to toe the company line, but you also have to figure out what works with your clients.
It is
right?
that, like I said, it's a ping pong game, back and forth, like keeping you happy, but also still doing my job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The question, what did you smoke pre-repping days? I can say this on the podcast. It's fine. I I like Ashton. I like Perdomo's 20th. I was a big fan of the Leaf line. I'm trying to think what else. Oliva, the Sierra
A lot of different
V.
stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
kind of all across the board. But yeah, it was, I kind of circled around. So
Nice. Pass the bottle there. I want to play this clip actually to get us back on track as we round out.
Is it me?
Huh?
Did you take it of me? Is it
The clip of you?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm gonna see if you guys can pick up on this on the
We can't
microphone.
show that video.
This is actually
who I am. If you like it or you don't like it, I don't give a fuck. Right. I know exactly who I am. My kids know who I am. My circle of people that I give a shit about know who I am. And that's what mattered to me. Outside of those people and my circle that I give a shit about, I could care less. I am who I am. If you like it or you don't like it,
so one more
I
time.
don't give a fuck.
Hopefully you guys can hear this.
I know exactly who I am. My kids know who I am. My circle of people that I give a shit about know who I am. And that's what mattered to me.
Yeah,
Outside
that
of
says
those
a lot.
people and my circle that I give a shit about, I could care less.
Well, and that's what I said, early on in the conversation. There's a lot of people out there that give too much weight.
people they don't even know?
Yeah, people they don't even know, or people that aren't even that close to them, like someone who doesn't
Are
provide.
we gonna polish that off?
Like, I mean,
Are we gonna polish that off?
I mean, it's your bottle.
No, it's our bottle.
Then yes.
Okay.
If that, is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, sometimes, but like I said, there's a lot of people out there that they give too much weight to what other people think, and yet if all of a sudden you had something going on in your life,
Ghost.
that person's not the person you're going to call.
Ghost. And that goes back to the dinner analogy.
I mean, and Steve's talked about it before, where he's had people like Steve's had a lot of events here at his house, whether it be Southie Movie Marathon,
Get-togethers. I don't know about events.
get-togethers.
We've had a couple of Facebook events, yeah, but they're more private.
Extravaganzas.
events,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Some get-togethers, some barbecues, some holiday parties. Southie.
We like to
Movie.
host. We like to
Yes.
host, yeah.
But he's always said there are people that he's invited to these events over and over. He's gone out of his way to make that person feel invited to come here. And then that person just never shows up to any of them. And Steve's still friendly and friends with those people, but he stopped inviting them. He stopped wasting his time, his energy, knowing what the result was going to be in the end. It's not because he didn't care about that person. If all of a sudden that person, just randomly showed up at his doorstep and was going through something, Steve would be there to help that person in whatever way he could through that event. But he's not going to go out of his way and bend over backwards when that other person couldn't care to show up for a
They're
simple
still going to be a
barbecue.
genuine human being, but
Yeah.
they're not.
It's
Yeah.
more of the not responding.
Yeah.
That's where you realize, I think, sometimes that your circle of people, right, that you are trying to include, that you when there's no reciprocation, you do, I think there's a little bit of a scar tissue that builds up, right? So there's this aspect of you do want to include these people that were close, like you talked about, your friend that doesn't have social media and all that stuff. You don't go out of your way all the time, right? Anymore. You keep doing these things, but sometimes the attendance, and this is a metaphor also, but the attendance to events that you're having or get-togethers you're having or things that are going on in your life, it gets smaller. The invitations get smaller. Getting married again in June with Kristen, and we were looking at inviting people to a wedding, and there's a family, and then there's a small group of her friends and my friends that you're still interacting with, that know the relationship. But shit, we've been together for about almost 3 years, and some of the friends in the past that I've had They haven't really made an effort because priorities or just life happens, as you were saying, David. It's like, stuff happens, so it's less personal anymore. But there is like that Dana White thing that hopefully you guys could hear. It's not that I don't give a shit about those people. There's a more of an aspect of it's just like
the value in the other people that you are.
What's the value of my time? What's the value of what's important in my life right now? Where does that rank in making sure I'm trying to include people that don't even say, hey, I can't make it. Hey, like you see the red receipts on the text, you know what I mean? And there's no response. It's like, okay, that now I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know if it's something that I did. In the past, I used to take that kind of personally and then almost try to overextend and try to correct something that may not even need correcting. But if someone's not going to give you even 10% of the effort, I'm not going to give you 90 anymore. It's just not there. You know what I mean? Like I realize that there's people in my life that I feel as though that I've given more at certain times, doing this show, inviting people over to the house. There were times where we had a lot of people sit in the garage, and I think there's a little bit of doing where you put yourself out there, you extend an open invitation to your home, to your life, to your experiences and all that stuff. Through social media, through personal relationships and conversations, through the business aspect of it, it's very easy to become callous of that. And I think what I've really been learning in this topic is very pertinent to me is that it's not that I shut doors. I'll leave them open, but I'm not going to be standing at the doorstep every time. I'm not going to be walking out to try to bring you into this. You might be struggling. You might be doing that. And you might have even been there when I was struggling. But when life gets easier on one party or the other, there's times where it's just this time, which is fleeting, just continues to pass us all by. And there's a time where you have to realize what's the value of my minutes, my hours, my days, my weeks, my months, my years. How much effort are you putting into something that is not going to be a return on investment, not necessarily in a business aspect, but in your energy that you have, because you only have so much. So you can focus on yourself. You can focus on the people that are in that, your family, your close friends, the people that are giving you the reciprocation, the respect in that. But you also have to realize that it's not always a disrespect if they're not responding or not attending metaphorically to your events, right? To your life. They're still, you're not going back to this. There's a concept or a way of, I think, relating to this is that you're not the main character in everyone else's life. You're the main character in your life. Everyone else, hopefully, if they share a similar mindset, there's a little bit more of respect. Well, yeah, but it's like they're the main character in their life, hopefully. And hopefully,
who's an NPC?
Right. Hopefully it's something that is important to them. The people in your life that they were your circle of friends, as we have on the screen right now. They were the people that were important to your life. If you part ways in any way, whether it's abruptly or if it's just over time, you have to respect that.
I think there's an aspect of selfishness that as adults we need to understand from one person to another. If you don't have the time to do something and you say straight up, I can't make it, there needs to be no offense taken. And we the communication of that, it's not personal. It's, I have 2 kids, I have a job, I have things going on. I know you invited me to XYZ. We just simply can't make it, and take no offense to that. You invited me, I appreciate the invite. Or even if it's just 2 buddies, hey man, what are you doing next Thursday? You want to grab a drink, you want to have a smoke, whatever. I can't next Thursday. if you're just straight up with your close circle of friends, at least me anyways, if you're just brutally honest with these guys, at least my circle of friends, we've always been cool enough to just say straight up, man, like it's not a good night for me. You know, I gotta
There's
help.
a big difference between I got something going on versus I don't feel like it.
And even
like,
that aspect,
you don't feel like hanging out. Cool. I remember that next time.
Here's the thing though, even that we we're very close with our neighbors in our neighborhood.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah,
we have kids that are roughly my kids' age, and it's one of those things where we're in a group chat and it says, hey, so and so's outside. Does anybody want to come out and play? And straight up we'll say, my daughter's not having a great night. It's not a good night for her to go out and play, if you will. And it's one of those things where, as parents, as mothers and fathers, we understand if you were to say that to us, like, hey, so-and-so's, just kind of high strung tonight. They're not really having a good night. We're going to keep it inside tonight. And that's just one of those things where
little Johnny was bad at school today. So he's getting punished by not being
as adults and as kids. I think there needs to be more emphasis on being okay when somebody declines an invitation.
Yeah.
You have to also communicate a little bit like that. Like you're telling me that, and I don't have kids, and Kristen and I, it's like, on Saturday night, I'll work, a long shift or whatever it might be. And across the street, Matt will text, he'll see me come home or whatever, whatever it might be. And he's like, or he knows my work schedule. He's like, hey, we're having a fire out back if you guys want to come. I don't typically ignore that. Or if she's been, relaxing and she's already in her PJs, or if I'm just like, hey man, I had a rough day or whatever.
It's
like, hey man, not tonight, man. It's just been a long week and we got a long Sunday, whatever it might be.
There should be
more time together.
Yeah.
That kind of
there should be more of an acceptance when people are just straight up with you and say, listen, I appreciate the invite. Can I get a rain check or whatever you want to call it?
Like you can literally say, I'm sorry, what Nate, going what you said.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay. Like, hey man,
I'm gassed.
I'm not feeling it tonight, man. Like it's just been a long fucking week. And I could use a drink around the fire, maybe a smoke, but I'm going to bed.
And it's nothing towards that person in any way, shape, or form. It's nothing against what they're actually doing. It's just the fact that let's say you're mentally tapped or you're physically tapped or whatever it might be. Like, we have gotten to the point with our neighbors that we are under the understanding that every day is not a great day for the kids to go out and play. Or for the parents. Exactly. Like if I had a long day at work, I don't want to say I necessarily want to go outside for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is and we call it POD, parent on duty. I mean, it's just it's one of those things. So I try my best to be a part of that and let them by all means get out all of the energy that they have. But our little clan of parents in our neighborhood are very understanding, and I think it's cool that we can just say straight up, like, my daughter's going to be in tonight.
Not tonight.
Not exactly. Tonight. So whether that be for a birthday party. I mean, we've had conversations with our neighbors where it's like, so-and-so got invited to a birthday party, but they were already like double and triple booked for other things. Yeah. And it's like, why do I have to feel bad about saying, we can't make it to that? We've already got other plans. It's like, when that comes to your best friends or your closest circle of people, a buddy of mine has 4 kids. I have 2 kids. His schedule is different than mine. He has other priorities. They're in sports. Sure. They're older than
different
my kids.
Ages. Yeah,
I'm under the understanding that like his time is extremely valuable,
limited,
and it's not as limited as mine. So if he has a moment of freedom to do something with me, then I'm hopefully going to take advantage of that. And
sometimes you
if
have
he
to
can't
step
do
up
it,
and
I'm
do it.
never offended by that because he's a family man. He's a father. He's a husband. And even, we go back to your groomsmen's talk. My 5 guys that I had, their fathers, their husbands, when they're busy, when they're genuinely busy, I've invited them to events that I've done. I've invited them to, because they're cigar guys too. So I'm like, hey, I'm doing a cigar event in the neighborhood, if you will. If you guys can make it, great. If you can't, I'm not going to be offended.
You're part of the industry,
exactly. So, whenever I show up to golf, it's like, hey man, here's some stuff and here's what we got going on. But we all are under the understanding that we all have lives. We have stuff to do. And at the end of the day, if you can't make it, it's not for any other reason than you have stuff to do. You have things going on. You have a life. So I'm never going to be offended if my friends decline an invitation of mine. And I think that should be more of the general consensus is like, people don't devalue your friendship by saying I can't make it. I think they value your friendship by telling you straight up, I can't make it to whatever it is you're inviting them to.
Because like what Steve alluded to, they're at least responding and communicating that. They're not leaving the message.
If you ghost me,
they're not leaving the message on red.
Yeah. If you ghost me, that says more than, hey man, I can't make it.
And then it's followed up sometimes by, it's like, man, I haven't heard from you in a while. It's like, well, hang on a second. You know, the phone goes both ways and the invitations go both ways. I've found that, you know, Nate, you know, this is that, and I've said it before where, you know, I do, Kristen and I, we host, and before, you know, Kristen and I were together, you know, 3 years ago, I was still hosting stuff, trying to do things. And it gets to a point where it's not reciprocated, and it's like, all right, well, it's not even personal anymore. It's just kind of going back to that Dana White thing. It's like,
I know who I am.
I know who I am. I'm gonna invite people, but if you're not gonna come and you're not gonna invite me to stuff, and it's never reciprocated,
where are we at?
You're on a shorter list now. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm not even upset with you. It's simply,
we just know where we stand now.
Well, it's we know where the priorities are right now, and it's not like it's no matter how you say it, it can be construed in a negative way. But for me, it's more of, it's like, no, I mean, I would love what Tim said.
Got to say it should be respected, and then sometimes you have to choose what's right for you.
Yeah, Tim Dodge says sometimes you have to choose what's right for you, not what is easy. And it's just you keep trying to invite, and it's funny. Jonathan's inviting me to Texas. Ray's saying, you know, Vietnam's the same as 2 DR trips a year. I agree with that, and I appreciate you guys still being friends with me, because I also know that, like Sean Wilkinson, who's been on the podcast a lot, I was telling you, he lives in the back of the neighborhood. A lot of times he's in that chair right there, and he's inviting me to some, you know, fires at his place and stuff like that. But those are the nights, just like, you know, Matt and Abby across the street. It's those moments where it's like, I would, in the past, I think you have to find that balance. In the past, I would go over even though I wasn't feeling it, but I felt like I appreciate the invite. Yeah. It's not even for me. It's not even obligated. It's more of like, I want to put the effort into this relationship. You went out of your way to ask me to come over. If I say no and no and no and no and no, then I'm going to stop being invited. And that's why I try to over communicate. It's like, hey, like even a follow-up, like it's so crazy. In business, it's even lacking of the follow-up. But in the personal relationship, I'll like the day or so afterwards, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, hey man, sorry again, I couldn't make it over. You know, I was so gassed. And it's like, I think that goes a long way, because there are people.
The previous podcast, I mean, it was communication, and it was totally understood. And
you have to communicate, and there's a lot of effort there. And I think that's something that I was trying to, when David, you and I were talking about, like, you know, we were like sending these like videos back and forth about what we could talk about tonight, is the one thing is I don't necessarily want you to think that you are an island, because I know people, and I have close relationships, working and otherwise, with people that it's the woe is me mentality. It's the, oh, no one wants to hang out with me and all this stuff. And, you know, what effort are you putting out there? If you're happy with it, being alone or being, you know, this island of a man or of a woman, like you're fine being alone. Great. That is fine. If you want to be a hermit and be by yourself, I respect that. But as soon as you open your mouth and you say that, like, no one wants to hang out or no one wants to do that, it's like, you've been invited to this.
It's like, wait, hold on, I got the receipt.
Yeah, you don't want to do it. You complain about no one wanting to see you or hang out with you. No one likes you. You complain about this stuff. It's like, now it's a problem. Now you're living in a false sense of reality that you have created for yourself, that it is now just quicksand, and you need to get out of it somehow. And you need to grab mine or someone's hand to bring you out of this fucking delusion that no one loves you or likes you. It's like, and you can sometimes even like rattle it off. Like, I'm sure, not sure, But there might be people like in your circle that they're just like, man, you know, the kids are always this, and man, I just like, I got this going on. I got like the bills are coming in, all this stuff, and it's like, I just asked if you wanted to come over and have a cigar on me. Walk across the fucking street. And next time I ask, if you're just sitting there,
people prioritize what they want to prioritize. You know, if you want to make it a priority to see those people that are important to you, you will make it a priority. You will set aside time.
There's energy you have to
correct. So there's energy. It's effort.
That's one of the things that I've kind of struggled with over the last few years.
Nate, can you tie this into this?
Yeah, it's one of the things. It's one of the things I've kind of struggled with over the last few years, because where all my friends are, or the people that I would want to hang out with, I'm on the complete other side of town.
Yeah, you chose that. I'm sorry.
Dug your grave.
Hilliard, where's that? California? It's like 25 minutes away. We're like,
show me another place where I can get what I get for what I got, for what I have to pay.
Yeah, fair. Well, you should have bought earlier. Clearly, you should have saw the signs.
Steve's a real estate agent on the side.
But no, like
that's a giant bug on our table.
That's one of the hardest things for me is, there are certain people that I wish I could hang out with more, that I could spend more time with.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, well, for example, Steve, we live on opposite sides of town. What do Steve and I do when we do hang out together? Smoke cigars and drink. That's pretty much what we do.
It's a bond. Solid bond.
But there comes a point where it's like, do I want to drive across town, drink, but not drink too much, and still be able to get like there?
Yeah,
it's like that's a tough one. I still make time to do this every week that we do it, because it's something that's important to both of us. But then I think about my next closest friend in proximity, like actual friend that I've known and would hang out with. They live in fucking Lancaster.
Doesn't seem that far away, does it?
Yeah.
But then again, that person never makes any effort or invitation my way either. So
fair.
I don't feel like I'm losing out on anything. And so when we talk about the concept of circle of friends, I always alluded to more of a triangle, because there are different tiers of friendships. The lowest,
we're talking about like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, love triangle.
A pyramid, but not a pyramid scheme.
You said love triangle. I said pyramid.
No, we're not talking about life's most complicated shape.
Is it a prism?
No, those are Ted Lasso.
It's like 3D there. Yeah.
No. Anyway,
the food pyramid.
Yes.
At the very bottom, you have the acquaintances.
Wheat products.
At the very bottom of the pyramid.
Sorry.
Very bottom of the pyramid, you have acquaintances. Those are people you see on a regular basis, you talk to, you don't necessarily hang out with them. Like, they're colleagues sometimes, or just friends at work, people you meet through work, but they're not necessarily the people that have a lot of meaning or significance in your life. And the next step up from that would be casual friends. These are people that you might actually go and have a beer with or something. If they're on your side of town, or you might invite each other to kids' events or something like that. But again, as you go up pyramid, you're getting to a smaller number of those. And then you go to your close friends. Like, those are the people that if they actually asked you for help for something, like, you might actually help them out, or vice versa.
They ask you to help you move.
No one
for free.
Let's be honest. Once you get over the age of 30, no one wants to help any of their friends move.
I was way over 30 when I helped you.
You were, but that's because you're not in the close friend.
Yeah, you're in the top of the pyramid.
God damn it.
Or the triangle, if you will.
Yes.
So
you're a schemer.
So you have those close friends. Those are the people that you want to invite over to your place, or when they invite you, like, you'll sit there and be like, you know what? Wasn't planning on doing that. I planned on just hanging out at home, but you know what? We haven't hung out. Yeah, I want to go hang out with you. I'll make the effort. Those are the people you actually want to.
Jonathan just asked you for $50.
You make more money than I do, Jonathan. Fuck off.
He said borrow.
He said you could call an Uber too. So that excuse of drinking at
Yeah.
Steve's house is
I don't have an Uber account.
okay.
It's an app.
I was gonna say
No,
we'll get him on
I'm
Lyft.
well
You're a
aware.
Lyft guy. Yeah.
Bourbon and BS Uber account.
Patreon.com.
The Patreon. It's gonna go to Nate's rides home.
Yeah, Nate's right home. Venmo at Bourbon and BS.
For me to get here and home.
Yeah.
That way I'm not leaving my car.
Do you have a Venmo account?
No.
Oh my
shit.
God.
Jess does, I know.
Yes, she does.
All right, well.
You carry one of those things you like squeeze together and the coins come out. That's the only thing I can think of that would be.
That's right.
At the very top of the pyramid is your intimate friends. That's the one you have the smallest number of. And the person who actually explained to me the whole friend pyramid thing said, if you have 2 to 3 intimate friends, one of whom should be your spouse or significant other,
If you're so lucky.
if you're so lucky, if you have 2 or 3 intimate friends, you're blessed, because those are the people that when shit's going on in your life, you can reach out to them and they will absolutely respond, with very rare exception. Like something significant would have to be going on in their life for them to not be able to come to you.
I think those people, the opinions that they have, you value the most.
Absolutely.
And
That's why they're in that section. Those are the people that you are the absolute closest to. And that's why we all have trivial stuff that goes on in our lives and we reach out to certain people for those. But then we have serious things that go on in our lives. And who do we reach out to for those? If we're dealing with something mentally or personally, or even a relationship, like if you're having a relationship issue with a significant other, who are the other people that you go to talk things over? Chances are you can count those people on one hand, even if you lost a few fingers. And like, those are the people that when you're going through something, you know you can reach out to them. And hopefully it's also the other way around.
Yeah.
When they're going through something, they're going to reach out to you. And so, years ago when Steve was going through some life stuff, start out with Steve. Steve and I are just work colleagues. But when Steve was going through some stuff, like Steve would talk to me about things. And because of our different life experiences, I felt like I had a hard time relating to what Steve was going through, but I appreciated why Steve was reaching out to me. I understood like Steve cared enough about our relationship and how close we were that Steve would sit there and just open up and lay it all out on the line, be like, this is what I'm going through. And I would do whatever I could. Sometimes whatever I could do was just listening.
Absolutely.
If I could interject.
Yes, you can.
On the flip side, because of our different communication styles and different personalities, when you're going through stuff and other people in my life are going through stuff, I reach in and try to get it out of you.
Oh, you're good. This is Steve. Steve is
festering at
Steve is really good at just sitting there poking.
Oh, you don't want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Cool. You're gonna.
Yeah, Steve will
have another pour. We'll talk about it in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, Steve will.
Then you'll Uber home.
Yeah, Steve will absolutely.
Thanks to Jonathan Herring, you'll Uber home.
No, Steve will absolutely sit there and just grill you, almost to the point of annoyance.
Frustration, I'd say.
That's a good word too.
That's top pyramid stuff. That's top triangle.
He will do whatever he can to break you open until you get to the point where you finally talk about it. But I think part of the reason Steve does that is
I think he knows. He genuinely knows.
It's not just that. Steve knows that if you have someone to talk about it 2, it'll make you feel better.
Oh yeah.
So Steve's not sitting there trying to poke at you to get it out of you just to be a dick.
Sometimes
Sometimes it feels that way. But he's doing it because,
me.
one, he wants you to know that you have someone that you can talk to about it. But also, he wants you to know that he genuinely cares. And if something's going on and you matter to him, he wants you to know that you matter to him and that you can also rely on him for whatever's going on in your life.
Top of the pyramid. Got people like that.
David, closing remarks here. Ray Chester's kiss? What? Come on, man. Jonathan, it was after the podcast we talked to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna full circle. I enjoy what I do.
Thanks for being on there.
I enjoy telling people what I do and being confident in that. Going back to the videos that you said, being genuine and keeping yourself open to experience. I've definitely kind of broke out of whatever shell that I was in.
Love it.
It's been a blast being on here. Like I said, just this in general, this experience has been different for me to speak, whether it's in front of just 2 people or live or whatnot.
Don't worry, no one listens to this.
Montecristo Espada Signature, phenomenal cigar. Mr. Pepper, not to be confused with Sergeant Pepper. This is James E. Pepper. Great
first lieutenant.
Yes, great bourbon. I appreciate Bourbon BS having me, and I look forward to doing hopefully a Montecristo M.
We should, yeah, hopefully
for the next one. So
he was a commissioned officer, all right.
Yeah.
Colonel
Henry Clay actually was a senator for Kentucky. That's your fact of the day, and
really
also part of our Altadis brands. Henry Clay, for anybody who's looking for a nice Connecticut cigar under $10.
That when that Warhawk first came out,
Warhawk is the truth.
Not what I was expecting by any means.
So Henry Clay, Warhawk.
I do like how the Warhawk, the gift set came with the Jack Hawk 9000.
Yeah.
But I kind of missed.
If you don't like Dr. Pepper, then
I kind of missed the
Fuck
stalk.
you.
I kind of missed the stalk cut.
Yeah,
that was a good smoke.
Yeah. So Henry Clay was a senator for Kentucky. That's your fun fact of the day. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. I enjoy our conversations, and
can't wait to have you back on.
Definitely look forward to the next pour and the next smoke. So, yeah.
So I'll round it out with this, and both of you guys had just great conversation tonight. One of the things that we do on part 2, especially, is that what I really appreciate still to this day is that when Jake Sanders and I started this podcast together 6+ years ago now, he wanted to do like a bourbon and cigar review and all that stuff, and I said that's fine, but at the time I was listening to other podcasts and I was different stage of my life, and I'm like, I want to get something more out of this. I'm not going to just do another one, which now looking back, I think it might have been more lucrative to just do more cigar reviews and bourbon reviews, because people are making shit tons of money on that. You know what I mean? Off of YouTube, just
they're doing great doing 15 to 30 minute spots.
I should have, spent more time on the editing and like blogging side of it and getting more advertisers. Thank you, Altadis, for you guys supporting this. But I look at all this stuff. I listening to you guys, going back to some of the clips that David, you and I sent back and forth. You had the Huberman thing. Don't eat with people that you wouldn't starve with at the same table, right? You had your Boy Meets World, which you guys can joke about that or not, but I mean, any of those sitcoms that did really well, there were a lot of those like life lessons things going on there. And then the Dana White clip that hopefully you guys could hear on there
came through pretty well.
It seemed to. I hope that no one commented if it went through or not. It's all about both sides of it, right? And I think, Nate, when you were bringing up what you were talking about, is that I don't necessarily anymore think about those times in my life where I was struggling, because you were there for me. what I think about anymore is that the value that I put when I was talking earlier about the value of your time and the people in your life, the things that like Dana White was saying about that is it's not the aggressive, and I understand where he's coming from there. It's not the aggressives. I don't give a shit about what you think. It's there are people that they are going to be there for me, and they will give me a lot of like constructive criticism. They will be there just to listen. They'll do all of the things that I might need at the times that I need it, or they might be up just to have that beer or that whiskey or the cigar or whatever, not even including, the kids or life getting in the way, right? I can't expect you to like call off from work just to be there for me, right? I can't expect you to like leave your family, your kid's soccer match for me, right? That's not what I'm looking for. But I also expect, not everyone's the same, but I expect people to treat me the way that I treat them. And I have people in my life, and I know that like Kristen, my fiance, and I have these tough conversations, and sometimes it's not resolved in a matter of minutes. With friends, I want you to, if I'm closed off, which I'm not always closed off, I'm rarely closed off anymore at this point in my life. But if you're closed off, I don't have time for that. I'm not going to do the weeks on end, the texting. I had a friend of mine
You're
that
not breaking down walls.
I have a friend of mine that I was messaging today with, and he's been going through a divorce and a separation. They're divorced now, but it's just been a rough couple years, and we send memes back and forth, or like the reels back and forth, and it's like, hey, how's everything going? It's going. And I said, well, that's something. He's like, how's everything going with you? I was like, things are going really well. We just went to the Dominican. I just gave him a little bit of, whatever. And he's like, well, that's a better response than I had. Well, I said, well, I was a little bit more descriptive than you. How's everything going with you? And he's like, everything's going all right. I'm like, that's it. That's all I got, man. Nothing against him, but I'm not going to keep prying. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it. But like, if we're in the same room and you keep saying that, like, oh, it's going and all that stuff, it's like, clearly you want to talk about it? Like, get over it. Like, let's talk about it. Like, get past your roadblock or whatever. It's like,
might do you some good.
Well, the parallel there is that if you can't even talk about it, you're not going to get past it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you're going to be in my close circle, then you need to. I'm not saying we're going to fix it tonight, but fucking get it out. Talk about it. Because I know that
Don't beat around the bush.
Don't beat around the bush. Yeah, absolutely. Because if I'm doing the same thing, it's like, to Nate, you said it's annoying. I said it's frustrating. I get frustrated with it. Is if dude, we're at this point, most of my circle of friends, there's an age range there, right? And I have friends that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And I don't care anymore how old you are. I'm in my 40s. And if you can't even communicate with me, if I'm not even part of the equation, I would respect it the first time that you just say, I just don't want to talk about it. But if you just dance around it and all this bullshit and all that stuff, it's like, clearly you don't want to talk about it because you don't even want to address the issue. You don't want to get better. You don't want to do this. You don't want to make a better life for yourself. Or if you're not ready, that's fine too. Just tell me you don't want to talk about it. But if you are just telling me like, oh, it's going, it's like, you say that a few times, like, cool, it's going. All right, talk to you later. I don't have time. The value of my time is not the same as the value of your time, because you are, as we've talked about it, and I haven't brought this up in a while, is that you are so hand in the face that you can't focus on anything, that you won't even let me help you bring that hand out so you can focus on everything. You won't let yourself get past whatever's going on right now. And I've been there. I can try to talk you through my life experiences, but I know that if you're not ready to do that, then you're not going to be in the closed circle right now. As soon as you can be yourself and be true to yourself, now you can be back in the circle. You can be back in this growth together. I'm not going to let your experiences that you're tied up in, that you've been tied up in. If it's fresh, I get it. But if it's just lingering, like, that's 3 years ago. Let's go. Like, we have to do this. We have to do life together. And if we're not going to do it together as as a circle, you're on your own, man. It's not that whole thing.
It's easy to go from a circle to an island.
Yeah. If you want to be on an island, no one wants to be on an island. Have you seen Castaway? It sucked. Tom Hanks was miserable.
Yeah.
His biggest feat was a volleyball and making fire. Lost? I mean, that's
Never watched it.
I'm not going to spoil it, but it's not what you thought.
It's all a dream.
We'll say.
God bless the survivors of that flight. Cheers, guys. No, guys, talk about it. Let's figure it out.
Thank you.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday. David, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Altadis,
guys.
thank you very much. Guys, have a great week. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We got, I will post the schedule for the upcoming shows in November. Other than that, guys, enjoy it. We have a couple tickets for the event if you guys are listening, you're local. But we are looking forward to tomorrow night, the prime rib dinner at Fido with Tinder Box at Easton and Altadis. Montecristo is going to be the feature. And Nate, hold that up real quick, what you got.
So this nice little Montecristo leather, almost like a satchel.
That's right.
And open it up.
Don't show everything.
Oh.
There's some gifts. Go ahead.
That's all right. Or
There's some cigars in there, lighter, cutter.
Basically, if you come to the event tomorrow night, you're going to get that and you get the prime rib dinner for free, value-wise.
Yeah. My absolute favorite cigar is in this leather pouch. I'm going to enjoy that.
Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Enjoy Halloween and enjoy the fall weather. Cheers.
cheers.